the legislation passed, what would happen to promotions from
jeopardy?
I want everyone to realize what he just said. The entire EMS workers, and keep seeing the workers leave the agency. What do you will think will happen to the department as a whole?
You know, I've described this to you in private conversations publicly as the biggest crisis in public safety that I originally said that nobody's talking about it. Thank you to the council for talking about it. And I've had a lot of individual conversations with council members that are in this room about this. I think that we're on the wrong track here, and respectfully. And I think that, we need your help. And this is a good step in the right direction, but it's not the correct step. And just because I won't be sitting in the seat, I think there's enough momentum now to implement a lot of the ideas that Commissioner Guerra and I and Chief Miano and his staff are leading, that they won't just stop when I leave. And I'm encouraging this team to stay on, and I want this agency to have its best days in the future, and I'm very optimistic about it.
Well, then I don't understand why the mayor is in support of this disconnect. It just shows that he has less respect for high-quality workers, as you put it, Chief. No, they're not second-class citizens, you're right. They are front-line first responders, and they deserve to be treated that way, not just by us, the council who do, you, the FDNY that does, but the man sitting across the hall in the mayor's office. This is a way of him actually just kicking something to the side that he had no interest in from the day I became chair, the day I was elected, and the day I became intimately involved with the FDNY. Like you, Commissioner Guerra, and you, Commissioner Tucker, and you, Chief, I am also on the ground, and you know that. I go to firehouses, I go to EMS stations. I have my entire district. You can't throw a stick without hitting someone who is a fireman, EMS, paramedic, or a police officer. I have not gotten one response from any of those members that think that this is a good idea. They cannot operate on their own. They cannot operate on their own. They're where they're supposed to be. It was right to put them with FDNY, and it is absolutely tragic that the mayor is even considering. And Councilmember Brannan, he really does have a heart for the FDNY, and we've worked together on 5th firefighter, issues and such. But I can agree with you on that, and we can disagree on this. The EMTs need to remain with the FDNY. We had an entire conversation when I came here on diversifying the FDNY. That's what it was all about. And the EMT is being promoted into FDNY, taking the test and going into FDNY. That's how we were doing an organic diversification of the FDNY. And there were qualified people that were going in. And that's what we need to continue happening. We cannot allow EMS to stand alone. EMS will not survive standing alone. So I thank you for your time and testimony. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Chair Ariola. And with that, I will pass it over to Councilmember Powers and Councilmember Morano. I hope I got that order right. And then we will shift to the next panel.
Thank you. I know we have another issue here as well, a bill of mine, so I will keep it very brief. I think you have sufficiently persuaded me that keeping the agencies together is a good, keeping the entities together is a good idea. For everyone, I think the dignity of being that agency is a good thing. So thank you for that. But I do, of course, want to echo what many have said, which is additional to that and separate from that, the pay issue is real, and I hope we can work through that to make sure that as we talk about our paraprofessionals next, that also our first responders get the pay equity they needed. I have no questions. I just wanted to say thank you for your service, Commissioner, to the city. I also wanted to express my deepest condolences. Firefighter Pat Brady was a friend. I've known him for 30 years, and many of my close friends are very close to the Brady family and deeply hurting. And Councilman Ariola, I know as well, knows many folks in her district in Bell Harbor and Rockaway who are hurting as well. And just a reminder of how important it is to show our respect every single day to those who are heroes for our city. So thank you for everything to the fire department and all our firefighters do.
Thank you, Councilmember Powers.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Powers and Councilmember Morano.
Commissioner, first, let me join all of my colleagues in thanking you for your service. You've really just been a tremendous credit to the city and to the department. And in my district, and for me personally, we're really going to miss you. Wish you weren't leaving. I want to follow up on sort of the related issue that Chair Ressler raised on response times, but more narrowed down to emergency response coordination. One of my concerns is that emergencies don't unfold in silos. You know, there's fires, medical calls, and rescue operations. They often overlap. Can you explain how separating EMS from the fire department might complicate unified incident command, especially during multi-casualty incidents or fast-moving emergencies where seconds really do matter?
So thank you for that question. So that's one of the most important things that we have, being part of the fire department, of having EMS as part of the fire department. The training that we do together in some of our programs, including our rescue paramedic program, where we are expanding, where our rescue paramedics work alongside our fire special operations command, to be able to reach patients that would otherwise have to wait for care to come to the surface if they're down below or if they're trapped, you know, to come out, right? Because of the ability to train together, the ability to work together, the synergy that's created, the response is enhanced so much that, you know, I think we're the greatest response agencies to any type of disaster in the country.
Somewhat related, unless there's anything you want to add to that, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief.
No, I would just add that the chief is highlighting a pilot program that we're currently operating where our most highly trained paramedics are responding simultaneously from a firehouse, Rescue 5 and Rescue 2 in 5 in Staten Island and 2 in Brooklyn, have dedicated paramedic resources responding on every run that they are going on. That's a first for us. And all the rescue companies will have it before the end of the year.
Would creating two separate agencies introduce, for lack of a better term, new points of failure, such as separate dispatch, communications chains, or training standards that aren't present under the current integrated structure?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Morano. And one final item from Councilmember Ariola.
I just had a quick follow-up. I just want to ask if, because we didn't have a real answer on the attrition, but a point can be made that if we spend a lot of money training workers who stay in EMS for short periods of time, couldn't that money be spent, even a portion of, towards improving their salaries so it does become a career for them and they're not looking to jump?
I would say yes, that makes sense. But, you know, again, that's negotiated between OLR and the labor unions, and
Right.
And we're hoping for a more than positive outcome when that's over.
Right, and we would hope that OLR would be able to see that and when they come up. And I just want to say that I was once a sponsor on this bill, and I took my name off after I had conversations with EMS and the EMS workers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for really insightful and thoughtful questions from Councilmember Ariola. I have to say, Commissioner, I heard you get your flowers from Councilmembers Carr, Brewer, Powers, Morano. These are not easy folks to please. So when you earn their compliments, it means you've done a good job. So thank you for your service to the city. I want to thank everyone on this panel for being with us today. We are going to quickly shift gears to our next panel. I want to just thank the team from FDNY again for being with us and for the really insightful and informative hearing. I think this is really what council hearings should be about, are thoughtful, engaged conversations about important topics, and I think this was helpful today. I'd like to invite the first Deputy Commissioner, much discussed today, from the Office of Labor Relations, Daniel Pollack. Thank you for joining us. And Peter Ianello from the Department of Education. That will be our next panel. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. If Keith was here, he'd read a statement. Is he close? You're on the hot seat. Yeah, he is.
There's one. Oh, there it goes.
Councilmember Powers was going to read a statement, but I think it's fair for you all to do your testimony first, and then he'll come and he'll do his statement before we begin questioning. With that, I'll invite you both to, I don't know, is it just Deputy Commissioner Pollack that's testifying on behalf?
Yes, it'll be just me and then
With your
Mr. Ianello.
extensive testimony. Do you think you'll be able to keep it under 5 minutes?
I'll try my best.
Okay. Read slowly, please.
Do we need to be sworn in?
Oh, please, let me invite our committee counsel to swear in our witnesses. Sorry.
Okay. We will once again hear testimony from the administration. Before we begin, I will administer the affirmation. Panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
Yes.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair De La Rosa and Chair Ressler and members of the committee. I'm Daniel Pollack, First Deputy Commissioner of the Office of Labor Relations. I'm joined here by Peter Ianello, Executive Director of the Division of Human Resources at New York City Public Schools. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today on Intro 1261, establishing a new pay differential for paraprofessional employees at the Department of Education. Intro 1261 provides a very complicated formula that compares the starting salary for DOE paraprofessionals to the highest salary for principals over the last 20 years. The payments are forecast to increase each year. OLR believes that while well-intentioned, this bill would undermine the collective bargaining process that has been in place for a half-century. As you may be aware, since 1967, the city has been obligated under the New York State Public Employees Fair Employment Act, commonly known as the Taylor Law, to bargain wage rates with its municipal unions. The payments that are the subject of Intro 1261, like other pay items and other terms and conditions of employment, are mandatory subjects of collective bargaining under the Taylor Law. This means that the city and New York City Public Schools must negotiate these matters with its unions representing the employees at issue, and these benefits cannot be imposed by local law. Specifically, in the 2007 case of Mayor of City of New York versus Council of the City of New York, the Court of Appeals stated, the Taylor Law prohibits local legislative bodies from usurping the executive's prerogative to agree with unions on terms and conditions of employment. That concludes my testimony, and I will address any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner Pollack. I think you are going to get questions about multiple topics today. But before we begin those questions, I'd like to invite the lead sponsor of Intro 1261, Councilmember Powers, to offer an opening statement.
Thank you, and good morning. Almost afternoon, I suppose, at this point. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my bill, Intro 1261, to correct the pay differential for paraprofessionals employed by the DOE. As paraprofessionals, or paras as we call them, play an incredibly important role in our city's schools. They provide instructional, behavioral, and physical support to students with disabilities and assist teachers in implementing individualized education programs. I've had the opportunity to meet with paraprofessionals and get to know many, as well as many parents in my district who rely on their support. And to me, it's time we recognize the hard work that paraprofessionals do for our city, because our classrooms simply wouldn't run smoothly without them. According to the UFT, which represents 26,000 paraprofessionals in New York City, paras have a starting salary of just under $32,000. I don't have to tell anyone here that that is not enough money to thrive in this city. And I want to note that particularly at a time we're talking about affordability in this city, this feels like a good place to start. These workers are subject to the same 3% salary increase as higher paid DOE employees, create an ever-widening pay gap between our highest and our lowest workers. But paraprofessionals are a critical lifeline in our schools, and the impact their work is felt across communities. It's time we ensure they're given the respect they deserve and the raise that they are due. I want to thank the UFT and their members for the advocacy on this issue. With this bill, we can close the inequitable gap in pay that our paras experience. I also want to thank our paraprofessionals personally for the work you do every day, but for also showing up constantly to make sure that you are out there using your voice to help not just yourself, but the paraprofessionals all over the city who can't be here. I want to thank Chair De La Rosa and Chair Ressler for holding this hearing, and my fellow bill sponsors, committee staff, and advocates for their support. And while I don't have the facts in front of me for sure, I know that I am almost certain to say this bill has the most sponsors of any bill I have seen in the City Council, maybe perhaps in the history of the City Council. I also just want to note before we get started, after your testimony, I just want to note it's a very short testimony, and I understand it's a legal sort of opinion, but I would have hoped in this statement here we would have seen the words like even the fire department gave to us in their statement, that you agree with us that paraprofessionals should agree to get a raise. And I would hope that the opinion of this administration, despite what your legal opinion might be, would be a starting point that you agree that we need to raise the pay for the paraprofessionals. So I hope we will hear that in your questions. But thank you again for being here, and thank you everyone for being here today for this hearing.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Powers. I would like to acknowledge Councilmember Hanif, who has joined us via Zoom. And with that, I will pass it over to my co-chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Powers, for your leadership, and Chair Ressler for the opportunity. You know, I want to just set the stage a little bit here. This is possibly the last hearing that you're coming before the council, and so I hope that this dialogue can be one of productivity. The council seeks to understand impacts of legislation, and I know that you've been a guest at many of our hearings, and a lot of the answers is that is subject to negotiation and we cannot discuss that. But I do hope that we can break through that wall a little bit to understand how we can achieve some of the goals that this bill sets forth. Because when we look at a workforce, $32,000 a year starting salary, no one on this dais, and I think no one in the audience would disagree that $32,000 does not feed a family. And for an administration that often talks about downstream solutions, what's more upstream than paying people what they deserve? People who are working every single day in the city school system, the largest school system. I mean, when we pass a budget in the city of New York, most of the funding goes into the DOE. And so we need to make sure that the processes that are in place to negotiate these salaries take that into account, the workforce that we're talking about, a workforce that has 1,600 vacancies at this time. I wonder why. So with that, I want to ask, how has the practice of pattern bargaining affected paraprofessional wages over time, in your opinion?
Thank you for the question, Chair De La Rosa. I would just like to start by saying, you know, I do have enormous respect and value the work that paraprofessionals do. You know, it's an incredibly important role. It means so much to so many in the city, so many families, so many children. And I don't want the testimony that I give here or have given in any of the hearings that have appeared before this and other committees to imply that we don't value the work, that we don't, you know, in an ideal world, we would pay every city employee more. You know, OLR often says we value every city employee. You know, you've got the ones that we're talking about today and, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of others, many of whom play very important roles, deliver incredibly important services, sometimes, you know, at risk to their bodies, at risk to their lives. And we value all of them. So, you know, things that we say, when we say things are subject to negotiation, it's not because we say people, you know, we don't wish we could pay some people more. But OLR does always have to consider the entire city. We have to consider the entire workforce. And, you know, the fundamental, my fundamental kind of point here is that collective bargaining is the way that we work through those issues. Collective bargaining is the way that we work through those issues. So it's not, I just want to preface this by saying, you know, I do value the work of these employees, and that is not, you know, the intention of my testimony is not to say that we don't. In response to your question, as kind of other employees in their bargaining unit, so under the UFT contract, as well as, you know, other employees who receive the pattern wage increases across the city.
I respect your comments and I appreciate them. But when we're talking about an administration that spends hundreds of millions of dollars on Carter cases, when the DOE can't provide mandated service to students, we're still paying that money out. It's just not going to the people that are doing the work every day. How does this agency determine whether pattern bargaining models will be used for certain titles during negotiations? Is there a policy at OLR for each mayoral administration to employ pattern bargaining during negotiations, or is this a model that is used selectively?
Thank you for the question. It's not a model that is used selectively. You know, OLR is engaged in pattern bargaining for all titles across the city for the last, you know, 40 plus years.
So can you walk us through sort of what the process is for determining the models for negotiation?
The pattern? Mm-hmm. Sure, of course. So, you know, pattern bargaining, typically in a round of bargaining, we refer to a period as the round of bargaining. The current one we refer to as the 2021 to 2026 round, based on the first agreement we reached in the round, which in this round was DC 37. You know, after we reached an initial agreement for a round of bargaining, you know, we view that agreement as the total cost of that agreement from a percentage standpoint. So you look at all the items in the agreement that have a cost. It's general wage increase is usually the largest one, but there could be other items as well, welfare fund contributions, other fund contributions. You look at that and you come up with the total percentage cost of that, and that is the kind of pattern package that, you know, we seek to reach agreement with other bargaining units.
Okay, so that percentage determines the increase for all of the other units without taking into account the lowest rung city workers and the gaps that exist in that workforce?
Not necessarily. So I think the total cost of the deal, of the package as a whole, forms the basis for the package that a particular bargaining unit will seek to achieve for a particular bargaining unit. But there are a lot of different ways to get there and a lot of different things you can do within that package. Mm-hmm. I mean, just to take DC 37, for example, in this round, mm-hmm. they used some of the, you know, the total funding within that package to raise the minimum wage for their employees to $18 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Can you put the microphone closer? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
Sure, my apologies.
Yeah, it's okay.
They used some of that funding to raise the minimum wage for their employees to $18 an hour. They also used some of it to establish a fund of $73 million recurring for the parties to agree to address specific titles. So there are ways within kind of a pattern framework to target more money to certain titles and not just, you know, have it be, it's not just automatically everyone gets the same thing no matter what. It is up to each bargaining unit to negotiate on behalf of their employees, and we negotiate with them to try to meet their priorities while also addressing, you know, city interests. And that can often mean directing more funding to a certain title.
Is there a precedent for negotiating specific titles outside of the pattern bargaining? If so, what titles were they and what were the outcomes?
So, I mean, as I mentioned, you can certainly direct more money to a title and still have it be within the pattern framework. You know, there have been instances in, you know, over the last 40 or so years where, due to kind of extraordinary recruitment and retention issues, there have been kind of efforts to provide some additional funds to address those issues. The one that I can think of always off the top of my head is nurses in the late 80s. There was an issue with extraordinary kind of retention issues during the height of the AIDS crisis that, that kind of compelled the city to create a new framework where there was a kind of parity provision with certain hospitals, certain private sector hospitals.
I mean, this to me seems like an extraordinary issue when there's 1,600 vacancies in this one title. So what is the benchmark for extraordinary?
So I can't say that there's a particular number, but it would have to be something that is, certainly far and away beyond anything that any other group is experiencing. And while 1,600 vacancies of paraprofessionals is obviously of concern, I'm sure my colleague from NYC Public Schools can speak more to recruitment efforts and things like that. I would not say, I think we've, in some of our discussions even spoken about vacancy rates for various titles across the city. I don't think it's something kind of necessarily out of the ordinary across the city with various titles.
I mean, I come back to the Carter cases, and I come back to, I know if Chair Joseph was here, she would be talking about this. Given the legal mandate to provide interventions for students with special needs, I would consider this to be an extraordinary vacancy, because every vacancy is a child that's not getting a direct service that is mandated by the law.
Yeah, I certainly understand that perspective. I will say, and I think this goes back to what I first said, you can find those examples everywhere. There are so many places where there are city employees doing work that is valuable, that if not done or if not done properly can lead to liability for the city. I can't say I'm familiar with the Carter cases specifically very much, but I think that is something that you see everywhere. So for me, to look at just one, you can always look at one and you can kind of see why there's an argument, why there's some issue that jumps out at you, but you really do have to look at the workforce as a whole, and that is, I think that is something that OLR always has to be conscious of.
Does OLR conduct any analysis on how compensation level influences attrition? Specifically, have you done that for paraprofessionals?
I have not seen an attrition analysis for paraprofessionals. We do often look at attrition of city titles. It is something we often look at.
So OLR does have the capacity to make an analysis, to conduct an analysis?
Yes, we often work with our colleagues either at the agency, at the Office of Management and Budget, to look at attrition data for city employees.
I would love for you all to take this on for paraprofessionals as well, because even as we intend to pass this legislation, but even in the face of that, it would be important to have that data and equip the council with that data. So we should talk more about that offline. I don't want to hog up the panel. You have some questions?
Go to Keith, if that's okay?
Yeah,
Do you want
let's
to
go to Keith. No, go ahead.
All right, we'll come back to Chair De La Rosa. We'll go to Councilmember Powers.
Thanks. Is there a representative from the DOE here today, too? Oh, you're from the DOE. Okay, thanks. I just would start by asking a simple question. Does the administration agree that the paraprofessionals should have a pay increase?
So I can't, I can't speak for the entire administration. I can say, like I did before, that I think pretty much every city employee, deserves a pay increase. I would love if every city employee were paid more. I think that obviously there are constraints to that.
Department of Education.
I think we would defer to OLR on that. I can't speak for the entire administration, but I mean, we do value our paraprofessionals tremendously. They are 25,000 active and strong. We also have about 14,000 substitute paraprofessionals that we look at. We're proud to offer a lot of advancements for them, career advancements, things like that. But I think we continue to invest in them and to try to make a difference. But I can't speak and say that that's a policy of the DOE.
Got it.
We defer to OLR for salary.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, this is not meant to be snarky or anything like that, but I would have hoped the answer was just sort of a yes, and complicated or expensive or whatever you think is the answer to that.
All of the above.
All of the above, okay. How many, I'm sorry if this got asked already, but how many paraprofessional vacancies are there currently?
So there are approximately 1,700 paraprofessional vacancies currently. Those are funded vacancies, but it should be noted that the majority of those vacancies are being covered by substitute paraprofessionals on a regular basis. There are currently 9,000 substitutes that are working almost every day and covering those vacancies plus other positions that the principals deem appropriate.
And what is in your opinion, the primary barrier to recruitment and retention of paraprofessionals?
So I don't think there's a recruitment barrier at this point. We have a large pool of people that we are assessing and we are hiring on a regular basis. We've made a lot of efforts in this area, especially last year. We went out to the communities. We were doing job fairs in every borough in collaboration with the UFT, bringing in a few thousand people. Last year, I think we hired over 6,000 substitutes, and to be a full-time para, you first have to be a substitute para in order to make that transition. So I don't think that there is a recruitment barrier, so to speak. There are people who are in substitute positions who do not want full-time positions. We've heard a lot of that. They rather work every day. The only barrier that I see as potential, but it's not even something that I think is quantifiable, is they are required to take the state exam to be an assistant teacher. And that's the one requirement that they have after they become a paraprofessional and work 25 days, that they would be able to work full-time.
So you have not heard from any paraprofessionals or potential or departing, perhaps, that pay is a barrier to retention or employment?
I have not heard that, and we don't normally discuss that in any of our conversations.
I would suggest you talk to some of the folks in this room who I think, and I'm not saying that to be, I'm just saying I think that is an issue. And I think it's important that the Department of Education understands it and hears that. What is comparable pay in other cities for paraprofessionals?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
What is the comparable annual pay in other cities for paraprofessionals?
To other cities?
Yeah, what are other cities paying?
So-
I understand Boston pays $40,000.
I'm not familiar with outside of New York. I do know that the salaries in New York are comparable to what our paraprofessionals are being paid. You have to understand that the teacher assistant line in other districts is very different from a teacher aide line, and in our city, everything is the same. Every job is paired as the same, whereas they're very different in other cities outside New York City.
When a paraprofessional departs from leaves the department and leaves the school, do you take any data collection on them giving a reason why? Do you have that data?
We have not taken any data as to why paras leave, but we actually are preparing an exit survey for paraprofessionals to note that. I do want to mention that the retention rate, we're at about a 94% retention rate annually with paraprofessionals. It's not a terrible rate. It's actually a very good rate. But a good number of those paraprofessionals who leave become teachers, right? So this past school year and the current school year, 632 paraprofessionals became teachers. So they're still working for the DOE. They're just now, promoted, of course, to a higher level. They would be looked at as attrition. They left the para title, but now they're a current teacher. So, and that's part of what we do.
I understand.
With them.
When are you going to be collecting that data, and when do you think you'll have the first?
We probably won't start collecting that until, do you mean the exit survey data? Probably will not do that until sometime in January.
You'll start as people depart to ask them for that. And is there any mechanism where you might be able to share that with the city council?
I'm sure at some point we'd be able to share
that. From your understanding, do most departures from the position occur during summer holiday between school years, or is there any sort of pattern about when you see people resigning or retiring?
The majority happens after the school year, before the next school year.
Has the paraprofessional workforce changed since 2020? And if so, what is the steps of the DOE taking to address that?
So, as far as numbers go, we are approximately 500 more full-time paraprofessionals now than we had in the 2021 school year. And we are continuing to actually.
What are you relative to 2019?
You know, I don't have the 2019 date. I'll have to get back to you, but it's not so much less than that. But we are about 500 more than what we had in 2020.
Okay.
2021.
But I presume that 2020, maybe it's going to decline.
There was a slight decline and then and another increase.
Okay. In respect of the public who I know want to testify and some other questions here, I'll hold my questions for now. I just want to reiterate, I have been heartened to meet many of the paraprofessionals over the last year who are working in the city, who are so critical and important to our education system. I know you guys share that opinion too. But we do have to understand that if we want to recruit, retain, but also respect the people that serve the city, we do that essentially by paying them. And whatever your legal interpretation of this is, it's also a statement from the city council, I think pretty clearly, overwhelmingly and bipartisan, by the way, that we deeply respect and want to take care of the paraprofessionals because it's what our parents are telling us, what our students need, and because we know the paraprofessionals need to stay on the job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Powers, for your leadership. We will now hear from Councilmember Ariola, followed by Councilmember Dinowitz.
Thank you so much for coming to testify today. Do you have a legal policy concern or any legal policy concerns with Intro 1261?
Thank you, Council Member. Yes, as I testified, we believe that legislation like this, which would essentially legislate terms and conditions of employment, would violate the Taylor law by kind of doing through legislation that which has to be done through collective bargaining.
Do you know why we have to legislate this? Okay,
It's not
rhetorical.
really.
I'll tell you why. Because OLR, the mayor's office, have been pushing back at the union to giving paraprofessionals what they deserve. Again, it is a carbon copy of what happened with our EMTs. If OLR was not so obstinate in truly collective bargaining with our EMS and with our paraprofessionals, with the UFT and their unions, we wouldn't have to legislate. We're so frustrated right now that we have to legislate instead. And yes, maybe it is against a policy, but it is the right thing to do. Paraprofessionals, most of them, are people who perhaps are single moms that can take this job because they can have time with their children when they're off from school, but they cannot provide for their children with the amount of money that they're making. So we have to do your job because you're not doing your job. You need to start to listen. I'm tired of hearing OLR say, well, this violates the policy and procedure, and that violates the law. I paid my intern this summer more than a paraprofessional and an EMT gets. How is that fair? How is that fair? This lies, and when I say that the mayor supports this, he may not have come out directly and said, I support the dissociation of EMS with FDNY or this bill, but the fact that he's done nothing to give these people the fair, equitable raises that they deserve over 4 years says that he's complicit and he does not support. And he does support then them going to other unions to try and get them what they need. The UFT, I agree with you. Big enough to say when you're right and when you're wrong. But you're right on this issue. They need more money. And I agree, and I thank my colleague, Councilmember Powers, for putting this forth, and I am proud to be a sponsor of this bill. But I'm so tired of hearing just pushback from bureaucrats in OLR and pushback from the mayor's office saying there's nothing they can do. These are strong unions, EMS unions and UFT. Negotiate with them honestly and get each of them the money they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Ariola, for that compelling statement and questions. Councilmember Dinowitz.
Thank you, Chair Ressler. Thank you, Chair De La Rosa. I also agree with Councilmember Ariola. I'm big enough to admit when a Republican and a Democrat can agree, and here we are. I have a few questions, but I was actually a little concerned about some of the testimony I heard. Do you guys know what paraprofessionals do?
I generally do understand what they do. I'm not intimately familiar with every aspect of their jobs, but I do have a general awareness. I'm sure Mr. Ionel has a much more detailed understanding of what they do.
I'll tell you the reason I ask. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure how many of us would be changing diapers for elementary school students for $32,000 a year, among other things. But the thing that kind of concerned me about the testimony that you gave in response to some of the questions was you used phrases like career advancement and promoted to other titles like teacher. And to me, we should be able to pay paraprofessionals a living wage, and it shouldn't be viewed of as something like a stepping stone to some other job. I mean, the people here, some of them have worked for 20 years as a paraprofessional. It is a job they love. They love our children. On my part, they were the glue that kept my classroom together, dealing with some of the most difficult circumstances. So it seems to me that the perspective around paraprofessionals from the beginning is the wrong one. It seems to me that the mayor's office, the DOE, OLR, views this job more like an internship or a stepping stone than an actual career where people should be able to make a living wage and live in our increasingly unaffordable city. So I just really wanted to share that because I was pretty disturbed about what I heard there. But let's get back to the numbers. You said there are 1,700 vacancies. You're going to begin an exit survey. Has the DOE observed any connection between paraprofessional vacancies or turnover and disruptions in IEP implementation, student progress, or classroom stability?
I can't comment on the IEP implementations. That's the Division of Special Ed. But what I can say is that we are staffing our schools with not only full-time paras but also substitutes, and the fact that 9,000 are there on a regular basis, I think, shows that the services are being delivered to the best of our ability.
I guess that's the difference between us is, I wouldn't, substitute para is a great job, but if I'm a child, part of what makes the para's job so important is the relationship they build with a child and the trust that they build with a child. So with all due respect to the substitutes, which are an important position, it is not really a replacement for a full-time paraprofessional. Because it's not, you see it as like checking a box to fulfill the services, but that's not what an IEP is about. An IEP is about supporting our children. Can
I respond?
Yeah, please.
I don't think that's what we look at this at. I mean, we have, as I said, we have 9,000 paraprofessionals that work almost every day. The majority of those people are in either long-term positions, working with students, with the same student with IEPs every day. It's very possible that substitutes could be moved, from different positions every day, but we do have a huge majority of our subs who are with the same students every day for long periods of time, months and months.
I believe you, although if you didn't speak to the Office of Special Education, I'm not sure how you can testify to that honestly today. And I can tell you from my experience and the experience of my colleagues in the classroom, I would say that's not the case, that very oftentimes students with IEPs who need a one-to-one para were just either given different substitutes, someone else in the building may have had to cover, or they just went without their para for days on end. So the experience of actual teachers seems to differ from yours. And if you're testifying to that, it means you did speak to the Office of Special Education. But I want to get back to reference something that Councilmember De La Rosa said. And this is OLR, this is numbers, this is money. Part of the testimony is this costs money. What is the actual legal exposure for due process claims given these vacancies? And these vacancies inevitably lead to IEP staffing shortages. Like, how much money is the DOE spending each year on Carter cases specifically related to students with paraprofessionals not getting their paraprofessionals?
I don't have that information on Carter cases.
But why not? No, I mean, seriously, we're here to talk. I mean, part of the discussion besides the Taylor Law, besides the Taylor Law is the actual cost. That's one of the other things we're hearing is the cost. But have you analyzed like how much money you're actually spending because these positions aren't being filled?
I think we'll have to get back to you on that because I'm representing Division of Human Resources and we're recruitment, retention, hiring, maintaining folks. I can't speak to the cost of the Carter cases. So we can get back to you on that.
I hate to say it. It feels like you didn't do your homework. I don't know. I mean, look, you're here to testify about a bill, and I would just think you would have more information. So tell me this: what's the pitch? You're doing recruitment. What's the pitch to a paraprofessional, a potential paraprofessional?
Well, I think first of all, it's the job itself of working with children and being there for the children and one-on-one. It could be one-on-one, it could be classroom. There are various methods for what they can do. I think the issue here is that we are recruiting them as substitutes. That's how we recruit them. And then they get their experience as substitutes, and then it's up to the schools and the principals to determine whether they want to hire those folks in full-time positions or not. So we're recruiting thousands of substitutes a year so that principals have a large pool from which to select. And that's how we start. We do present to them, what the benefits of working as a substitute are, the daily rate of pay, and then what the benefits of working as a full-time para would be, which is the pay rate plus, other benefits going back to college full-time. They can actually take 18 credits a year where we pay for it. There are some programs that allow us to give them reimbursements for graduate school. If they're becoming teachers. There are a number of different incentives that we have along the way. So that's all part of what we do. But our recruitment process brings us in substitutes, and then the schools themselves will hire them full-time.
I think we're very lucky in this city to have our paraprofessionals and very lucky to have people who despite what I think is inappropriate wages, want to work with our children because they want to make the city a better place. And how often does OLR deviate from pattern bargaining?
I would say it's extraordinarily rare. I don't think there's I don't have a set number, but it's extraordinarily rare.
Well, in the past 5 years, how many times have you deviated from pattern bargaining?
None that I'm aware of.
In the past 10 years, how many times have you?
I don't have anything specific.
Have there ever been any instances which are so egregious, such pay rates which are so egregious that an administration or OLR says, we have to do something a little different here?
Thank you, first of all, council member, for the questions. I referenced the nurses in the late 80s as an example. There were also some things that happened in an agreement with the nurses in the 2017 to 2021 round, some items to assist with recruitment and retention. There were some efforts taken with some other titles, the youth development specialists at the Department of Youth and Family Justice. After Raise the Age took effect, there was a kind of an effort to kind of do something there to deal with really, really rough recruitment and retention issues. Those are the ones I can recall from the last 10 years.
Right. Well, look, it is very clear to me our paras work extremely hard in many jobs that we would many of us here would be unable or unwilling to do, and they do it, and they love our children. They kept my classroom together. They were there for my students, and we need to be there for them. And if your testimony today is that the City Council is unable to help the paras in a very specific, simple way by providing them the dignity they deserve, by demonstrating our gratitude to them, then you have the moral obligation, and I think economic obligation, to make sure if you're working with children in our city, that you have to make sure that people working with those children can earn a wage where they can live in our city. And again, if your testimony is that we can't do it, it has to be the bargaining, then I think it's time to deviate from that pattern bargaining and recognize that years and years of percentage increases have resulted in a significant disparity. And anyone who wants to take my math class in Algebra 1 and compound interest, I welcome you to come after this hearing. But thank you for your time today, and thank you, chairs, for the extra time.
Thank you. Mr. Dinowitz, I have some answers for you. So OMB put the fiscal impact statement for this bill at $400 million in year one. In FY25, Carter cases cost the city $1.1 billion. So the math is...
So for those who are watching at home, $1.1 billion for Carter cases is more than the $400 million this would cost, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
1.1 greater than 400 million. Got it.
There you go, Mr.
Thank you.
Dinowitz.
You did some math. I know you did your inequalities. All right.
Did I pass your class?
You've A+.
Thank you.
Gold star.
All right. I have some more
Thank you,
questions.
Chair.
What are some examples of terms and conditions of employment that are negotiated during collective bargaining?
Sure, I can answer that one. Wages would be kind of the number one thing I would say. Everyone knows wages are a term and condition of employment. Any other kind of pay items, differentials, uniform allowance, things like that. Certain working conditions are considered terms and conditions of employment. There are obviously fringe benefits. Health insurance is a term and condition of employment. Pensions would be, but they're actually not as subject to bargaining under the Taylor law. Any other kind of annuity contributions, welfare fund contributions, those kind of things that go to employee fringe benefits. Those are generally the categories. Work rules, a wide variety of work rules can and can't be, may or may not be, depending on the issue. Something like, the process for how you select your vacation, maybe a term and condition of employment. There's really a huge variety. I think my office frequently is asked, is this something that would qualify as a term and condition of employment, something we have to bargain over, and we may have to do an analysis. But, the core ones really are wages and fringe benefits.
Great. I have a few questions for DOE. When a paraprofessionals are understaffed, does the DOE have a policy of how substitute paraprofessionals are distributed among schools and districts?
So there are a number of ways we do that, but we have a system called SubCentral.
Say it again?
We have a system called SubCentral.
SubCentral.
So all of our substitutes are loaded into that particular system. Schools then would put their positions in SubCentral, and it's an automated call-out system. It's also available online 24/7, so any substitute can go in at any time and look at the jobs that are available in the districts in which they want to work. So that's, right now, that's there. It is mandated for all schools this year. This is when we mandated it for this year, to use that system. So every mandated IEP position should be in there if it is being covered by a sub. So even if a school has a substitute that they like and they want, they can actually go into that system, create a job, and put those people in. Everybody is trained on that system. All subs are trained on that system when they first get hired. And we have a small staff that deals with them on a regular basis if there are any issues.
And are the para subs specialized? So if there's a unique need for a student and the para that was supposed to serve that student isn't available, is it matched with a para that has?
So right now, it is not matched to the specific need. The school can actually enter information into that particular job to say what the job is. And so when a substitute is looking, they will see that note in there to say, this is for a behavior management, crisis para, health para, classroom para, whatever. It could be in there. It's not necessarily in there. The substitutes can be moved around, obviously, but they are given whatever information is in there.
Yeah. I want to note that there is a discrepancy in the number of vacancies. I've heard 1,700, I've heard 3,000. So is it a range?
I can only tell you what's funded right now, and that's
Okay.
around a little more than 1,700.
Okay. Is what's funded the need?
Well, obviously, there's more of a need because there are people working every day. But those are not necessarily funded immediately. So that's why we have lots of substitutes out there working in those positions.
And do you have an analysis for what the need actually is?
I don't have a full analysis of what the need is. That would require us to go back to special ed and
Okay.
review the mandates.
Well, the committee would love to see that. So if you could follow up, and we'll talk to Chair Joseph as well about following up with that. What strategies are being used to ensure that students, particularly those in District 75 schools, receive the mandated service despite the ongoing vacancies?
Well, again, we actually work very closely with District 75 from the Division of Human Resources. We meet with them once a week. We go over what the needs are, what where their vacancies are, where they're having issues staffing. We have run a job fair for them specifically to open up the pool of candidates for them. We do have about 2,500 of our substitutes are currently working in District 75 schools. We're hoping that they all move to full-time, but that's not necessarily the case.
So say that again, 2,500.
About 2,500 of our substitutes who are working on an everyday basis are working in District 75 schools.
Okay. Are there any targeted initiatives to recruit paraprofessionals in hard-to-staff schools or programs?
So, yes, there are. We started this initiative again last year in terms of going out to districts and neighborhoods where there is a significant need and announcing those to the community around that area. We're going back to that beginning probably January to start recruiting again in the hard-to-staff areas like Far Rockaway, sections of the Bronx, sections of Brooklyn, where we actually need significant numbers. Those are efforts we'll make on a regular basis and as we need them. We have partnered with the UFT to use some of their facilities in order to have those, and they've been working out really well.
When applying to become a paraprofessional with the DOE, do applicants have a choice for which school or district they are assigned to? For paraprofessionals who are assigned to schools that may be out of their borough they reside in, are there any stipends to cover the cost of commuting long distances?
So there are several ways that substitute paraprofessionals get assigned and their selection process on how they are assigned. So when a school nominates a substitute, that particular paraprofessional automatically uploads into their profile the school that nominates them as their priority school, the district in which they are geographically located, and what the school is geographically located, and in the sense of District 75, it would be within the borough. So if I'm a substitute that gets nominated by a District 75 Bronx school, I would get that school, that borough for District 75, and my geographic home district where I physically live. Most paraprofessionals live in the same borough in which they're nominated. So they're not assigned to automatically outside their borough unless they choose to take those assignments.
And what is the difference with substitute paraprofessionals?
Those are the substitute.
Okay, so that's for the substitutes.
Right.
So the substitutes are not required to go out of borough?
They are not required to go out of a borough. They are required to do 20 days of service annually, and that happens usually within their district or their borough.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chair De La Rosa. Before I jump into my questions, we've been joined by a very special guest. My wife came today, Anna. Her mom and her aunt both worked for the teachers' unions for years, and this issue is so important to her and the fight to make sure that paras get the pay that they deserve. So really happy to have you. Before I jump into para stuff, I just wanted to ask Deputy Commissioner Pollack one question about our previous topic. Do you consider EMS uniform for collective bargaining purposes?
Thank you for the question. So I think it's not so simple a question. There was a local law in 2001 that amended the New York State collective bargaining law to designate them as uniformed under the collective bargaining law. What that means is that they are eligible to negotiate all terms and conditions of employment as an individual unit. They're not covered under the citywide collective bargaining agreement negotiated by DC 37. So they are classified as uniform for that purpose. I would say that.
So that you do classify them as a uniform union?
Under the collective bargaining law. The collective bargaining law does not speak to what the results of any kind of collective bargaining agreement would be. So it speaks to how you negotiate, the process, and what they can negotiate about. It doesn't speak to.
Isn't there a separate pattern you have for uniforms versus non-uniforms? Do they follow the pattern for uniforms?
Over the past few rounds, or I think as long as EMS has been its own unit, they have followed the civilian pattern.
So how do you call them a uniform? I'm sorry, I genuinely don't understand. You call them a uniform, you said you consider them a uniform unit for collective bargaining purposes, but then say they follow the civilian pattern for collective bargaining. Could you help me understand that?
Sure, I'll do my best. This is why I said it's not quite so simple. So, there's the definition of uniformed under the collective bargaining law does not necessarily speak to the ultimate agreement we reach on economic terms. So what the collective bargaining law says is if you're a uniform group, and that includes, police officers, firefighters. Yeah, it also includes, EMS also includes special officers, urban park rangers, traffic enforcement agents, many other titles who were designated as such under Local Law 56 back in, I think it was 2008 or 2009. What that means is that they're eligible they're not covered by the citywide, they're not bound by what DC 37 negotiates for the entire city as far as things like annual leave, which is a citywide term, or certain other work rules under that. They can negotiate on their own, and they are free to do that. That's the law. That's how we negotiate with them. If they say we want to negotiate an annual leave, a change in our annual leave, we wouldn't say, you can't. That's a citywide issue that DC 37 has to. We would say, sure, let's talk about it. But in terms of, when there is a pattern that's the uniform pattern and a civilian pattern, over the past, rounds of bargaining, the agreements we have reached are based on the civilian pattern, which is also true for many other of those groups I mentioned, traffic enforcement agents, special officers, urban park rangers.
And is that decision at the discretion of kind of the mayor and OLR leadership of who fits into which pattern? They have been in that pattern in the past, but if there was a decision by Commissioner Campione or the mayor or OMB director to say, actually, they should be following the uniform pattern, that could shift?
And so what I'll say is that this is kind of the unions the groups that have received the uniform pattern over the last, I'll say 20, 30 years
Decades.
Have been the same, right? There hasn't been a change. Of course, the mayor and the OLR commissioner and the mayor ultimately can decide whatever they want to decide regarding reaching a certain agreement. It's not a legal mandate.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. So, as you've testified to at some length today, OLR's typical practice of negotiation is pattern bargaining. In fact, I think you said it's all you've ever seen with exceptionally rare, with exceedingly rare exception. So one union gets a 3% raise, everyone gets a 3% raise, with some specific distinctions between the uniform and non-uniform. There are clear benefits to the predictability of this kind of negotiating approach, but historically, underpaid workers just continue to suffer more and more and more with each additional contract. the separation between relatively well-paid civil servants versus underpaid civil servants is actually exacerbated with every single contract that we negotiate. So how does OLR account for these disparities in the negotiating process when, as you've said, you've been at OLR for how many years?
13.
13, and it took you a couple minutes to figure out an example of non-pattern bargaining. So how do you account for that reality that every contract that you all negotiate exacerbates the disparities that exist in our workforce?
Thank you for the question. I would, I think, not agree that it necessarily exacerbates the disparities. It maintains the same percentage differential, and I think this isn't, necessarily an issue of just the way OLR in the city negotiates. Generally, I think out in the world, the way wage increases are given are often percentage-based, especially in the organized labor world, is based on percentages rather than, for example, a flat dollar increase. And so by doing a percentage-based increase, the percentage differential between titles is maintained, but the absolute dollar amount obviously does widen, as you reference. In terms of how the kind of, if a union is concerned about that or if the city is concerned about that and we want to try to address it, there are ways within the pattern framework to do that. I referenced our agreement with DC 37 in this round. We created this equity fund, which we use to kind of focus funding on particular titles. That's something that works well, especially for large unions like DC 37. It would also, the UFT, there would be the potential to do something like that to focus funding to a particular title. And it's something that we've done with other groups in this round as well. We really, this concept of, equity funding in this round, we allowed unions to, recognizing that where there's recruitment and retention issues, it's a mutual problem for both labor and management. There's an opportunity to essentially, each contribute funding to direct to places where we had this challenge. And we've used that for a lot of different titles in this round of bargaining. We used it for special officers and school safety agents. It used to take them 7 years to get to top pay. We reduced that to 5 years in this round. So that's something that wasn't just the pattern general wage increases. It's the way we were able to work with the union to kind of direct funding to where there was a problem.
Okay. Have you done anything for paraprofessionals in these 13 years to help elevate compensation and either first-year compensation or the rate at which they're achieving higher pay in your experience over the 13 years you've been at OLR? Or Mr. Ianello, and I don't know how many years have you been at the DOE?
28.
28. Can you cite any examples? You should know. No,
I can't.
You cannot. Okay. So that's troubling, deeply, frankly, troubling. So I was chatting with President Weingarten recently, and she referenced the equity panels that Victor Gottbaum used to advocate for. And he would, in DC 37's negotiations, create equity panels that would lift up underwage or low-wage workers. I was looking back at the 2018 DC 37 contract agreement, and Executive Director Garrido and the de Blasio administration negotiated a $40 million fund. I think 12.6 of it was dedicated, of that $40 million fund, was dedicated specifically for pay for poorly compensated workers. Do you recall the specifics in that contract?
Yes, thank you. I do. It was 12.6 million was the entire equity fund. It was about 0.2%, I believe, and it was for issues where there were recruitment and retention challenges or other equity issues, as you referenced. And that is.
Was that an effective approach?
I believe it was, and it's something we actually expanded in this round. The equity panel, the equity fund that we reached with DC 37 in this round is actually 73 million. So
okay.
We saw that, we think it worked great, and we said it needs to be bigger, and we worked with them to do that.
So $73 million dedicated for DC 37 equity fund. Have you replicated that model with other unions?
So we didn't, not the exact same model where it was an actual fund, but we did do the same thing where we, each labor and management each contributed labor through extending the contract or other productivity initiatives, contributed 0.5%, and then the city would throw in an additional 0.5% above the pattern wage increases to kind of direct funding to places where there were recruitment and retention issues. That was used, as I referenced, to reduce the steps in the special officer and school safety agent salary schedule. It was used on a few other titles where there were issues. I think we did something with traffic enforcement agents with it. Really across the city, we were able to, where there were challenges, use that concept. The UFT, we created the recurring retention bonus with that money, the $1,000 for every UFT member.
Do you think that we need an equity panel specifically focused on lifting up paras?
I think it's something worth discussing. It's certainly something that we would be happy to discuss with the UFT and, across the bargaining table. Obviously, we can't, unilaterally decide to do that, but it's certainly something that we would be willing to discuss.
I do just want to mention, I know your point earlier was that you don't think that the disparities are exacerbated by pattern bargaining. And I just, you have somebody who makes $100,000, 10 years later on 3% raises, they're at 134, 135K. For somebody who's at 32K, like a paraprofessional coming in, again, minimum wage job, that is almost exactly what you get making $16.50 an hour, working 40 hours a week in New York City. Over a 10-year period, they get up to 43K. So they're still not in a position where they're able to meet the needs of their family. They're still living in poverty in New York City. I don't see how pattern bargaining is solving for the needs of low-wage workers without some additional intervention to help lift these workers up.
I certainly understand your perspective. I would say that, like I said, there are ways to try to address these issues. And, I do think the kind of, not the pattern, the approach of percentage-based wage increases is something that has been, pretty consistent across the labor world and collective bargaining world. There may be other instances I'm not aware of. And, certainly if a union came to us and they said, we don't want to do percentages, we want to do flat dollar increases. We want, whether our member who's making $33,000, we want it at $5,000, and our member who's making $150,000, we want it at $5,000. Happy to talk about it, happy to figure out how that fits within, our framework, and if we can come to a deal based on that, we would certainly be willing to explore it.
I know that you mentioned we're looking at about, and maybe this is for Mr. Ionel, about 1,700 vacancies among paras, and that we've got about 9,000 subs. Are you able to help us understand, are those 9,000 subs essentially working every single day?
So we have 14,000 subs.
14,000 subs, 9,000 of work are working on it.
About 9,000 are working every day. We have 9,000 that work every day.
Got it.
Right? That are positions that are being filled every day. Of the 9,000, I would say probably about 7,000 are working every day in either one school or in various schools.
And in your analysis of the subs, and I think Chair De La Rosa was getting at this a little bit too, in your analysis of how subs are being deployed, are you able to better estimate the need in the full-time para workforce?
So depending on what information the school puts into the sub-central system on vacancies, absences, whether it's long-term, short-term, yes, we can see a little more about where the need is.
So help us. What do you think?
So I think that right now we have the 1,700 and some odd vacancies that are budgeted. I think that we have probably another 2,500 out there that are that could be full-time positions. Part of it is how these positions are funded. If new students come into a school, the school itself has to pick up the funding for that student for the year. And so principals would not normally create a full-time position until they are actually funded. Some do and some don't. So that's a little more difficult for us to manage, but we still see it through our substitute data. So I think our substitute data is stronger than it's ever been, and we're able to give that information over to our colleagues in Division of School and Leadership and talk to them about what that means.
Do you believe that if we had those 1,700 vacant positions filled, that we would have an adequate number of full-time paras, or is there still a gap based on your analysis of the subs?
So it's hard to say, only because when we look at what the actual vacancies are, we're looking at budgeted vacancies, and we're saying these positions are the budgeted vacancies that need to be filled now. We are also looking at the substitute positions as vacancies, so to speak, right? But we don't know how that would change from semester to semester or week to week. It could be that I mean, when I look at what we could have 10 substitutes in one school working every day. We can have, of those 10, maybe 3 are assigned to the same assignment every day, and the other 7 might be just floating, depending on what the principal wants. So we won't know that really until we actually do a very deep dive into schools and what they're using the subs for. We have a lot of schools that use substitute paras as extra help, just to have extra help in the classrooms, just to have extra help in the school. And then we have, obviously, categories of, whether it's a health para, a one-to-one, a classroom para, behavior management para, things like that. So it's hard to really say whether that would, fill the gap. I think we have full vacancies out there. The other thing, too, is principals, I think, want to make sure that when they're hiring full-time, that they're hiring the right people. So they are waiting for people to prove themselves as subs in order for them to actually take that full-time position.
Is there an annual analysis that your office conducts based on the utilization of subs to make informed recommendations to DOE leadership about the need to increase headcount?
So,
and should there be?
I can't say that we actually do an analysis of subs or full-time. I think we give that information over to the school leadership organization, and they are the ones who determine which positions are full-time and which positions are not. The funding comes from various sources, so I can't really speak to that. But I would say to you that the schools themselves are the ones that are determining what the vacancies are.
Right. What would you say is the #1 factor preventing DOE from filling para vacancies and retaining paras more at higher rates?
Well,
salary?
I would say certainly that salary has something to do with it. It's not something that, again, I don't want to sound flippant about this, because I'm not at all. I want to be sure that it's not something we discuss.
Right.
In HR. It's out of our league in terms of our responsibilities and what we're supposed to do at this point.
But it's challenging to recruit people for these highly intense, demanding jobs that start at $32,000 a year.
Yeah,
As Councilmember Ariola rightly pointed out, our high school interns in our council offices are paid 60% more than that when they spend a summer with us.
I agree with you, and I think that, but I also think that there are some other benefits. I didn't want to. Representative Dinowitz said something that I think was misinterpreted.
You're referring to his dad, I think, council member here.
Yes.
His dad's the representative, but it's okay. Assembly member.
So I want to be sure that it's not that we think that this is a path to becoming a teacher. It's not a stepping stone. It could be a stepping stone, but we recognize that there are many people who love the job and want to be paras and are happy with those jobs.
Right.
So we give them this opportunity to better themselves in terms of their education. So we pay for their bachelor's degree. They get salary differentials that way. What ends up happening is we are seeing people who don't have the ability to go to school, who don't have the mechanism or the finances to go to school, and will take the job as a para in order to accomplish that, which we believe is a wonderful goal. So they do take advantage of our career training program, where they are achieving their bachelor's degree in every 6 credits or whatever it is.
As our HR expert who's charged with the nearly impossible task of trying to recruit and retain for the largest school system in the country, you're telling us plainly in your testimony today that the #1 challenge we face in recruiting and retaining paras that perform an essential deeply valued function in our schools is salary. How does that get communicated to OLR? It's not your job to negotiate the salary, but it is theirs. What mechanism do you have to share that information effectively with the folks responsible for delivering the decent wages that people need for us to be able to fill and retain these positions effectively?
I don't have the information on how that's communicated to OLR. I'm not involved in that. I am involved in negotiation.
Impacting our ability to recruit and retain these invaluable positions. How is that information actually getting to you? Being paid far less than they deserve, and I feel like as a system we failed them. And this legislation sponsored by Councilmember Powers is out of the box. It's an unusual approach to help this critical workforce. So we've got one more question from Councilmember De La Rosa.
Sorry.
Please.
Something was sparked in this conversation.
De La Rosa,
Sorry.
please.
Something was sparked in this conversation.
Sorry. It's about $160-something a day, based on a 6-hour and 50-minute.
Give me a yearly.
I don't have a yearly. They get paid by the daily rate. There's no.
And the fringe benefits are the same?
They don't have health benefits. They don't have other benefits that full-time paras have.
I mean, so, you know, we had a conversation, the panel before you, about a second class of workers, but I don't know if there's a more clear definition than not giving paras and substitute paras, like wages that are dignified and no health insurance in the city of New York. I mean,
Well, that's part of bargaining, you know, and that's part of.
Well, that's why we're here.
Substitute teachers don't get health insurance.
I get
either.
it, but that's why we're here, because the bargaining isn't living up to this workforce that is an essential workforce. So I think, you know, we use the word extraordinary. I think this is an extraordinary example of how we're failing our paras in the city of New York. Thank you.
You're good? I want to thank you both for your testimony today and appreciate you being with us. We're now going to shift to a all-star UFT panel. I believe we have President Mulgrew on Zoom, if that's right. Is that right? Yeah? Okay, great. And then we'll bring up to the table Randy Weingarten, President of the American Federation of Teachers, Priscilla Castro, the Chair of the Paraprofessionals, Karen Alford, the Vice President for Elementary. Oh, this got moved. This got switched. This wasn't the panel that I'd organized. What happened? Sorry, I had the sheets in a very specific way, so the senior people were all together. It's okay. Okay, well, we got a full panel, so it is what it is. Okay. All right, why don't we start with President Mulgrew, and we'll go from there. I've got to just read some language, though, first. I'm sorry. As we open the floor to public testimony, before we begin, I'd like to remind members of the public, I don't think it'll be an issue for this panel, that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all time. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant of Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant of Arms and wait for your name to be called. Once you've been recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak at today's on today's legislation. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant of Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nysc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. When you hear your name, please come up. The first witness panel is before us. Thank you for being here. With that, President Mulgrew.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the council for having this hearing. I want to thank the chairs, and I specifically want to thank Chair Della Rosa for arranging this due to personal issues for me, and I do because this is such an important issue. And I want to recognize how well you've all spoken about the valuable service, the invaluable service that paraprofessionals are supplying our city. I'm going to take a moment to talk about some of the testimony that I just heard, and hopefully I can illuminate and give you better answers than what you already have heard. At this moment, we're guessing 1,700 to 1,900 paraprofessional vacancies. We do not know what the vacancy number is. As you heard, the city just testified that schools determine what the vacancies are, not the school system. That is wrong. That is a policy decision they have chosen to make, but it is the IEPs that determine the number of paraprofessionals that we are to employ as a city. And we start there because we can't even get what the number is. Last year, we took a survey of all of our schools. We held a press conference. We said we could document 1,900 vacancies within a week. The Department of Ed in the city came out to tell everyone that we were wrong, but the number was actually in the mid-3,000s. So that is the silliness that we deal with all the time. But this is a very serious issue because we are in a crisis as a school system. We are in a crisis because we do not have the paraprofessionals that we need to supply service to individual students. So that means that student is in a crisis, and that also means their family is in a crisis, as well as you have put a school staff in a situation that becomes much more challenging in a school system with great challenges to begin with. And that's what I get so frustrated with when I hear the city. When I heard the deputy commissioner talking about we can work these things out in patent bargaining, there are ways to direct funding in creative ways, so we could have equity panels. I want to be clear what that means in a collective bargaining with the city of New York. That means that the other workers in that union are giving up their raises to pay for a different set of workers who are so underpaid that we can't even attract them the number that we need into our school system. I just want to be very clear on this point. Since the 1970s in the fiscal crisis, the city made the decision to follow patent bargaining, okay? But they made changes in it that always rigged the game for them. In private unions, in private sector unions, there is no way that the one set of union workers would pay for another set of union workers to get a larger raise because the company could not attract the workers. That's insanity. And that's why you hear them keep saying patent bargaining, because they don't want to change that because they've rigged the game. And they've rigged it in a way that is actually hurting our city. If you cannot attract the workforce, you need to pay them more. And you can't keep telling other workers, you know what? You have to pay them more, not us. This is a very expensive city to begin with. So that is why we are here under such frustrating, and you hear the frustration in my tone, because I've heard all of this. And for another thing to add, 2 rounds ago, over 300-member negotiating committee, did what I just explained to you, agreed to give up portions of their raises to help the paraprofessionals. But we knew we could not undo the damages of 50 years of patent bargaining. I don't understand why they keep trying to say that this isn't and this doesn't cause an inequity. If you have less dollars to buy things, then you are being treated inequitably. It's really that simple. You don't, Councilmember Dinowitz can probably explain this to you very easily, and many of you probably understand it. But for the city to sit and testify to act like that's not happening is insanity. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in right now. So as we move forward, we've been very clear. We are willing to work with City Council. We're to do everything.
Time's expired.
President Mulgrew, take whatever time you need.
Thank you. Yes, patent bargaining is at the point of the foundation of this crisis is the city's adherence to patent bargaining, which, as they admitted, is not a law. They just adhere to that policy, and they'll say it over and over again in patent bargaining. When we're at the bargaining table, they'll say it constantly. Well, that's outside the patent. Well, that's outside the patent. Well, isn't that nice? But it's your responsibility as the city to have a wage that will attract the workers that you need. And they don't want to talk about that unless other workers are willing to give that money to those titles. And for the paraprofessionals who have gone through this over and over again, to hear the city talk about how valuable the paras are, but to continually disrespect them and keep piling on this inequitable treatment of them, they get it. Nobody has to explain it to them, because these are the same, but these people are supplying, going above and beyond at all times. You have to understand that during COVID, thousands of paraprofessionals were getting up an hour early to take an Uber to their students' houses, to put them in an Uber to bring them to school, because we didn't have all the buses we needed. And every day in New York City, it's the paraprofessionals who are monitoring medication, very, very complex medication at times, to make sure that that child is being cared for in the right way. Or it's the paraprofessional who, on any given day, will see that their student is having all sorts of challenges controlling themselves. And everyone looks, when that is happening in a school, everyone looks to that para, because they know the para is the person who's been trained, but more importantly, has formed that bond with that student. And they go above and beyond at that moment to take care of everything so that child can once again calm themselves and get control of their actions. And for myself, who had a paraprofessional, and my classroom was an at-risk program, and many of my children had IEPs, but there was always a thought that people, would look at our class and think, oh, they'll never get a regular diploma, those children with IEPs and an at-risk class. But no, my para took all of her free time, before school, after school, when she had lunch, and tutored our students and prepared them for Regents. So this has to be dealt with. And we're willing to work with City Council, but we've had it with the games. And I want the city to be truthful. Patent bargaining is not a law. It's your responsibility as the employer to give a wage that can attract the workers that we need. Forget about the hundreds of millions of dollars that we're losing in all of the different litigations we have for being non-compliant in supplying services for children and for our children with IEPs. It is time for us to solve this issue. And that right now, why we put forth this legislation is this crisis is going on each and every day that school is open. And it's here, and it's just getting worse. And their continued policies, again, if it's budgeted, there's a vacancy, but if a school doesn't budget that they need a para, then it's not a vacancy, therefore we don't need a para. What kind of craziness is that? And for the poor principals, they're like, yeah, I'll tell them I need a para, but then they tell me they already gave me the money, and I'm like, where is it? And that's the craziness of the system that we all work inside of. But again, I thank you for having this hearing. I thank you so much for understanding the role and the seriousness of the service of the paraprofessionals. And I look forward to working with you to solving this crisis and then figuring out how we can undo, because as I said, private sector unions, they deal with this issue, and they deal with it not by telling all the other workers, oh, you have to pay for those raises because your job's gonna be harder if we can't hire those people. That's insane, and that's what we're living in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony, President Mulgrew.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, for sure.
Thank you. President Weingarten, would you be willing to go next? Would just press the button if you don't mind.
I think you want the people from the UFT to speak. The only reason I am here, other than supporting the UFT in this endeavor and supporting the paraprofessionals and the 48 of the 51 of you who have put this bill in, is that, like Michael, I negotiated contracts here for a long time. Pattern bargaining is not the law. It is the policy of the city administration. And what is happening here is a complete inequity that deserves both the city and the paraprofessionals themselves. You heard President Mulgrew talk about how in the last two negotiations, others in the UFT unit, the negotiating committee, took money from others to actually try to enhance the paraprofessional salaries. The gap is too great. This is a management responsibility, and it should have been something that management brought to the bargaining table.
That's right.
Not doing what they're doing and then using, I felt it was like Alice in Wonderland, listening to OLR, because they know it's not law. And you have a recruitment and retention inequity and a service inequity that Michael and the UFT has tried to deal with for the last 17, 20 years and have not been able to, so they came up with an elegant solution with Council Member Powers, and it's time. But I'm only here as an observer.
Well, a quite persuasive observer at that. I'll invite the other members of the panel to testify in whichever order you so please.
I don't know what time it is. I don't know if it's morning or afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Alford. I'm the UFT's Vice President for the elementary schools. And I think you've heard clearly from the rally outside to the testimony between Michael and Randy that what we have here are people who are valuable to our system. Our paraprofessionals are the backbone of the system. They are needed in our classrooms. They are needed in our schools. Our children need them to thrive. Our teachers need them. And so there's no question about the value that they provide. What is in question, though, is the city's commitment, what the city views as a priority, what the city views as a responsibility and obligation. And that is where the city is falling short. And here in this city, we want to make it affordable for people to stay here. So we clearly have a sustainability issue, and we cannot sustain workers. We cannot sustain our paraprofessionals because they are starting at $32,000, maxing at $54,000. And so while you hear, but they're getting 3% increases, but they're getting the same increases as everyone else, there's clearly a divide. There's an inequity here, and it can no longer be filled just through contract negotiations. And it is insulting. It is insulting to be told to wait until 2027 to think about negotiating a next contract. And we know that you will not fix this wage gap through contractual negotiations. That is very clear. And so that is why we've had to come up with this alternative approach. This certainly isn't the way we wanted to have to do things. We would hope that the city would understand and respect and value their workforce. But since that's not happening, we've had to come up with this creative solution. But now we know, though, this is just a starting point, and we have to change pattern bargaining. We have to be able to make inroads for our members. And when you think about that, now there is, what is the number? $1.1 billion allocated for Carter cases. And why do we have some of these Carter cases? Because we don't have paraprofessionals. And so our city has to do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Norton. I'm the General Counsel for the United Federation of Teachers. And I just want to speak a little bit on the Taylor Law issues that have come up so often in this hearing. I wanted to give the council a little bit of comfort in that the Taylor Law, the Court of Appeals has found that the Taylor Law does not prevent a municipality from unilaterally providing an economic benefit other than regular salaries or wages. While the Taylor Law doesn't define what salaries and wages are, the courts have entertained that question, and the Third Department has set up a series of questions looking at whether the payment is separate from the employee's regular salary, whether the payment increased when the employee's regular salary increased pursuant to a contractual agreement, and whether the payment was tied to work performed in the years that the payments, special work that was performed in the years the payments were made. This excess differential offset that we've established through this legislation, it doesn't meet any of these criteria. It is absolutely separate from the para's regular salary. It does not increase with contractual increases. It is not, the legislation is a formula. It does not follow the 3% increase. And it is not tied to a specific job or additional work that the paras will be getting as a result of this pay. So we believe for that reason, this economic benefit can be provided through legislation. It would not be averse to the Taylor Law.
Thank you, Ms. Norton.
Good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Castro, and I am the chairperson of the Paraprofessional chapter of the United Federation of Teachers. I represent 26,000 paraprofessionals who work in New York City public schools every day. On their behalf, I want to thank you, Chair Carmen de la Rosa, and Lincoln Ressler, and the members of the Committee on Civil Service and Labor, and the Committee of Government Operations for holding this hearing. Today, I am full of hope that we are about to take an important step, providing paraprofessionals with the recognition they deserve. I cannot express how much the Respect Check legislation has meant to my colleagues and me. The day that Councilmember Keith Powers introduced the bill in April, we were filled with gratitude and disbelief. To reassurance my members that yes, this was real. I printed out copies of the legislation and handed them out on the next chapter meeting. The possibility of an additional $10,000 annually felt like a lifetime and an opportunity for the financial freedom so many of us need. I have proudly served as the chair of the Paraprofessional chapter for the past 3 years. During this time, I have been inspired and moved by the work of my fellow paraprofessionals who show up with dedication and love for their students daily. But I am also felt heartbroken as I have listened to the stories of paraprofessionals who have struggled to make ends meet. As it stands now, they take-home pay for paraprofessional is often as little as $1,000 every 2 weeks. To pay rent, buy groceries, clothe their own children, and stay afloat with the sum is nearly impossible in any city, let alone one of the most expensive cities in the world. I received emails and phone calls from my paraprofessionals living in homeless shelters because they cannot afford to pay their rent, and from others who don't get home until 10 p.m. because they are working 2 to 3 jobs. Many of these educators are forced to resign from the job that they love, not because they want to, but because they have to in order to survive. This is unacceptable. We cannot allow our educators who devote themselves to our most vulnerable children to suffer because of the noble and necessary career path they chose. We also cannot afford.
Wrap up your testimony. It would just ask that you wrap up your testimony.
Okay. We also cannot afford to lose more paraprofessionals than we already have. Although the Department of Education has refused to provide us with the exact numbers of paraprofessional vacancies this school year, we know that the numbers is likely in the thousands. All these vacancies put our students and schools at risk. Without paraprofessionals, school becomes unsafe, and daunting environment for students with mental and physical disabilities. These students rely on paraprofessionals to ride the school bus with them, feed them, change them, encourage them, and support them throughout the day. For students and families whose home language are not English, multilingual paraprofessionals are their bridge to the school community. They enable families to communicate with teachers and administrations about their children and how they are faring the schools. Teachers also demand on paraprofessionals. When students experience emotional distress or frustration in the classroom, it is the paraprofessionals who calm them down so that the teacher can complete their lesson and dedicate time to other students in their classroom. The role of the paraprofessional is vital to the school community, and to the cost of losing even more of them will be much higher and more damaging to our students than providing them an extra $10,000 each year. To make it certain that our school have enough paraprofessional, we must pass the respect check legislation. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak about the
Thank you so
experience
much.
of paraprofessionals.
We really appreciate it.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Are you testifying as well?
Hi, my name is Michelle Herman. I'm here to just answer questions, but I also want to touch
You didn't.
really.
Did you fill out a sheet? She didn't fill out a sheet. We didn't receive a sheet. Let me say it differently. Okay. We didn't receive a sheet. But we'll take her testimony. We'll take your testimony.
Okay, I'm here to help answer questions, but I just want to touch on the formula that is outlined in the legislation. And so, today we've heard about the inequities, but I want to touch the formula, which is outside of collective bargaining, actually, which really touches on, it looks at the past 20 years of the growing pay gap between the lowest paid paraprofessional and the highest paid school-based official. So if we take a look at the actual formula, we'll see that this formula not only accounts for the past inequity, but going forward as well. But I'm happy to continue to answer questions.
Thank you so much to each of you. Do you guys have questions?
That was actually my question. I wanted to ask about the differential and how the process came to be to land at the 10,000, but I think you answered that proactively, so I appreciate it.
You good?
I just want to say thank you. Your advocacy has been amazing. I think we first met in my office with paraprofessionals who laid this out, and I was not deeply aware with all the sort of pay parity issues, but your team has laid it out so well for us. And I said I walked in this council 8 years ago with less gray hair and no beard or anything like that. But if we are able to help you get this pay equity, it will be one of the greatest things I am able to do in the city council. So thank you all for everything you're doing to fight it, because I know paraprofessionals can't be here, everyone, but as many in the audience who spoke earlier, your efforts, and President Mulgrew has been, I don't want to use the word bulldog, but maybe a bulldog to make sure that the city council really understands and wakes up to this. And that is why we have, sincerely, 48 plus borough presidents and public advocates. It's unprecedented how much support we have for this bill. So thank you for all your hard work, and President Mulgrew as well, because this is elevating a really important issue. So thank you.
I do actually have to ask a question so that we're putting it on the record. How will the bill affect the ability of the UFT or other unions to collectively bargain with the city for paraprofessional salaries?
Well, first, we would say that the bill actually, we've gone out of our way, as Council Norton has explained, to make sure this isn't part of collective bargaining. We could still continue to do what would be considered our normal collective bargaining, but taking where we're negotiating raises for our paraprofessionals. But we're willing to, in going into the future, it's really about what you have all hit on quite eloquently, that, talking about what the city's doing by adhering to this practice. It is the employer's responsibility. It is the employer, and as a municipality, it's their responsibility to be able to attract the workers that are needed to supply the services for our municipality. In this case, this is federal legislation, which an IEP falls under, that's saying that as a city inside of a state of the United States of America, you must adhere to the services that are outlined inside of an individual child's IEP and supply them to that child. Coming up with all these different reasons or policy decisions and saying it's not our fault. This isn't supposed to be a CYA, practice by the city of New York. This is supposed to be, this is a child's life. The paraprofessional is someone who's going to make a significant difference in that child's life. And stop playing these little games with, well, we have this policy about patent bargaining. We have this policy about, we don't actually count the number of vacancies. We wait for the schools to tell us what the vacancies are, and then we won't fund the schools, so they don't want to tell you. Those are the things that have to stop. So moving forward, the things I just described, that has to be dealt with in a different way, probably more aggressively through our city council, because the city's adherence to these policies are doing nothing but hurting the children and the families of our city itself.
Thank you, Michael. And can you explain how the Parapay Index that provides the excess differential offset payments to paraprofessionals is different from the regular salary?
Yeah, I can explain that, because it's specifically tied to the questions that our council just said. It is not tied to collective bargaining increases. It is not tied to anything that we negotiate inside of collective bargaining. It's tied specifically to an index, and it's not tied to paras performing any additional work. And those are the questions that the courts have asked when it comes to these things. I want to be clear. The provision of the Taylor law that says you cannot legislate any terms and conditions of a collective bargaining agreement are something that we support and something that all unions support. So we are very, very sensitive and careful when we're doing our work, because we know we would never want the ability of any legislative body or elected official, as you can see what's going on at the national level right now, where you have a president who thinks he could just wipe away collective bargaining. We wouldn't want any legislative body or elected officials to have the power to overturn what has been done in a collective bargaining agreement. So that's why we're very sensitive to this. But if Beth, if you want to follow up, be my guest.
Sure. I just want to also add to that in the latest iteration of the bill, the latest edits we made, you'll note that there are revisions that say if the city were to adopt new collective bargaining procedures and address this inequity through collective bargaining and actually raise the starting salary of paraprofessionals through collective bargaining, the city's obligation under this proposed legislation would cease. This is really an effort to address that gap, and that we would continue to collectively bargain and hope to address these issues at the table.
Thank you all for your leadership and the clarity.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much to the UFT team for just incredible advocacy on this effort. President Mulgrew, President Weingarten, and team, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for your partnership and work on this issue.
All right, we are going to spice it up and return back to the EMS topic for a little bit, just to keep everyone on their toes. We'll invite Anthony Almejera, and forgive me for any mispronunciations, Vice President from Local 3621, the Captains and Lieutenants at EMS, Oren Barziarke, I'm sorry, I'm terrible, FDNY EMS Local 2507, you want to help me on this? No. Byron Abad, and Brian Bradford from the Newcastle County of EMS. I don't know if I got that right. I tried.
Thank you.
You're fantastic. I did, but nobody can say, I didn't say who I was referring to. With that, I'll invite you to testify in whichever order you're so inspired. And you all have 2 minutes. We're going to try to keep folks to their time if that's possible. We got a busy day ahead of us. Who would like to go first? I only called 4 people up.
I would like to go first. Anthony Almejera.
Great. I don't know how that happens. Go ahead.
Ready? Yep. Good afternoon, Chair, council members, and colleagues. My name is Anthony Almejera. I'm a lieutenant paramedic with the FDNY EMS and the Vice President of Local 3621. the union representing the FDNY EMS officers.
Thank you.
I've served this city for more than 2 decades, responding to New Yorkers on their worst days. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in support of amending local law Intro 0521 and creating an independent EMS agency dedicated solely to emergency medical care for the people of New York City. New Yorkers depend on EMS more than any other service within the FDNY. We are already over 1.6 million calls for this year alone. We handle the overwhelming majority of the calls that come into the department. Every heart attack, overdose, mental health crisis, car crash, and shooting victim, it's EMS that answers the call first. But for decades, EMS has operated without equal resources, respect, or autonomy inside a structure that was never designed for modern emergency medicine. We've been treated as an appendage, not a core public health service. And that neglect doesn't just hurt EMTs and paramedics, it hurts the very citizens we serve. Let me be clear, this isn't just about pay or titles, it's about public safety. When a system is underfunded and structurally marginalized, response times suffer, burnout skyrockets, and quality of care declines. We're seeing that every day. Response times for life-threatening calls are rising over 12 minutes for priorities 1 through 3, which are your cardiac arrest, heart attacks, etc. Just for your edification, the chances of revival after 6 minutes in cardiac arrest drop by 80%. EMTs and paramedics are leaving faster than we can replace them, losing 10 to 15 people per week as per the department's figures. The pay gap between EMS and fire still exceeds 50%, despite equal sacrifice and danger. Dan Pollock claimed about negotiating, he claimed that if we came to him with flat dollar amounts, they would be open to that. And that is BS. They won't even provide you a proposal. You can't build a stable healthcare service on instability, and you can't expect the same high standard of care when the people providing it are constantly being treated as second-class members of their own department. I respectfully ask for a few more minutes to finish this. I've watched new EMTs and passionate, smart, compassionate burn out within a year because they can't survive on the salary of ever-increasing call volume over 5,000 calls daily and climbing. That revolving door costs lives, it costs experience, it costs New Yorkers the continuity and expertise they deserve when they dial 911. Creating an independent EMS agency would finally align the system with what it truly is, a frontline healthcare service, not a fire suppression unit. An independent EMS could partner directly with hospitals and public healthcare agencies to streamline care. Invest in training, mental health, and retention programs that actually work. Just for your edification, for training and recruitment, it is over $25 million for each time we have to bring in new people. It would cost less to achieve pay parity. That is what this city council voted on, to put $50 million in the budget, which the city rejected. We can build community paramedicine programs that prevent emergencies before they happen, modernize the fleet, technology, and dispatch systems without competing internally for funding or attention. The commissioner just made these conclusionary claims, such as it would be a catastrophe for response times, but nothing he is saying is accurate. The dispatch process would be untouched by separating the departments. The real reason they don't want to separate EMS from the FDNY is because they rely on EMS to cover 80% of the call volume in the department while only providing 10%, or as the person on OLR said, 60% of the budget. Cities like Pittsburgh, Boston, and Austin already operate independent EMS agencies and deliver faster response times, lower turnover, and stronger integration with healthcare. New York, who many in this room often say is the best city in the world, should be leading, not lagging in this space. This isn't about creating a new bureaucracy, it's about creating accountability and efficiency. When EMS stands on its own, New Yorkers get a workforce focused on one mission, which is saving lives. Faster response times in every borough, a system built around medicine, not firehouses. 2 separate agencies do not create separate dispatch and would not stop any coordination that's happening now. EMS is not on a fire truck. Fire is not on an ambulance. They would be dispatched exactly the same. It's time for the city's emergency medical system to reflect the modern reality. EMS is healthcare. We are the emergency room that comes to your living room. We are the first face that New Yorkers sees when tragedy strikes. We shouldn't have to fight the system we work for just to serve the people we swore to protect. In closing, council members, this is your chance to make history, to fix a broken system that everyone in this room knows isn't working as it should. When you elevate EMS to its rightful place, You don't just honor the people who do the job, you protect the citizens of New York City who depend on it. We've carried this city through pandemics, blackouts, terror attacks, hurricanes, and everyday crisis. We've done it with pride, professionalism, and compassion. Now we're asking for the structure that allows us to keep doing it better for generations to come. New Yorkers count on us at their worst moments. They deserve a system that values us at ours. Thank you for your time and for your attention to this matter. I am available for any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you once again for having us here today. I do not have a written testimony as I've been coming here for the past 8 years, and I don't want to sound repetitive over and over again of unresolved issues. I came here today with an open mind to hear what the department says. I heard nothing but lies today, distorted facts. We are second-class employees in the FDNY. We are treated disrespectfully. At every ceremony, they make sure to mention that EMS are civilians and not part of the uniform force. They even take the extra step to humiliate us in front of the public by making that small comment. There will be no chaos if we leave the FDNY. It won't be a catastrophe. Everything is already in place. We dispatch separately. We have our own stations. We have everything in place. It's just an ID that has to be changed on an ambulance. From FDNY to New York City EMS, as it was when I came in the early 90s. I was here prior to the merger. We never had response times to a cardiac arrest of 12 minutes. Or as I testified last month, of a father waiting while he's doing CPR on his son for 30 minutes before an ambulance arrived, ultimately succumbing to his death. We had a true medical career. EMS is not fire. EMS is a medical profession. My men and women were able to upgrade to a paramedic, a nurse, and a physician assistant. That was the career path for EMS professionals. As my colleague here mentioned, the only reason they want to keep us together is to keep those funds. EMS does 86% of the FDNY work, yet we get scraps. Sitting next to me, which is hard to speak about, is Shanice Johnson, who is homeless, working for the FDNY. How embarrassing is that? She's not the only one. If my men and women are homeless at $39,000 a year, I don't know how the paralegals are doing it for $32,000 a year. It's disgraceful. All are sitting here telling you that they're going to negotiate with us, we'll deal with it at the table. They're not dealing with anything but patent bargaining. And I sincerely appreciate your pushback on them today, because it exposes how we're treated when we're at the table. We're not safer in the FDNY. Our own commissioner asked the governor to veto a bill that would protect our men and women that respond alone to calls. His member was stabbed over 20 times. She succumbed to her death as well. There is no protection, there's no safety in being in the FDNY. The 5% attrition that they mentioned is a lie. We lose 20% every year. In January, we're going to lose 350 in one day of people going to fire. I'm not knocking anybody who wants to be a fireman. That is an honorable job. They are true heroes. However, this job is a stepping stone for them to get there. There's an open competitive exam, and there's an EMS promotional exam. If you scored 100 on the open competitive exam and I scored 70 on the promotional exam, I'm going to get called before you to be a firefighter. They're using us for our diversity. We are true stepchildren in the FDNY. Six years ago, Chief of EMS Lillian Bonsignor sat here and said she couldn't make that determination whether we deserve pay parity. That was extremely disappointing at that time. Today, our own commissioner couldn't say that we deserve pay parity. We're not asking to be rich. We're asking to pay for food, for rent, and anything else that comes our way. We don't even have the basic necessities.
I have to ask you to wrap up your testimony.
I
Is there any
understand. I'm
final
almost
thoughts?
finished. We were promised, as you mentioned, 60 stations. However, they promised us 70 stations at the merger. 25 years later, and we still don't have those stations. We work out of hand-down firehouses that were deemed uninhabitable for firefighters. Half of our stations are out of trailers. Mayor de Blasio funded over 10 years ago for Station 17 in the Bronx to be rehabbed. We're still waiting. The FDNY takes our money and never does anything to improve EMS. The response time is impacted by the fact that we don't have 200 stations as firefighters. We only have 40. When my crew comes out of Flushing, Queens, and their cross street location is in Howard Beach,
I gotta go send to.
it takes time to get to Howard Beach.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Really grateful for your testimony today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate the emotional and thoughtful remarks. We'll just finish the panel first, if that's okay. All right, for the rest of the panel, it's 2 minutes. We cannot go over. Unfortunately, we're going to be kicked out of the space. You're up next.
My name is Byron Abad. I'm a paramedic for the fire department. I've been working with them for 17 years. I've just recently started working in my neighborhood that I grew up in Sunset Park, and I feel like the fire department in the 17 years that I've been there has not done right by the EMS and the neighborhoods that I've served at. Quite frankly, I think they've failed EMS in the years that I've been on. We have been understaffed, gutted every time there's been a promotional to firefighters. There's a lot of favoritism that is involved also with it that I see day to day within the activities, where some of our members are overworked and underpaid, and they look across the aisle to the firefighters and see that they have better opportunities and a livable wage, so they end up leaving. I am one of the few that have stayed from my class that began 17 years ago, and we're beginning to feel alone, honestly. I honestly believe that if we separated from the FDNY, we would have a better chance at a stronger budget, delegating to things that we actually need and care about within the EMS service. I alone, just like everybody else in the service, have more than one job, and I try to mitigate it. I have 2 kids at home that depend on me, and we need better resources to help us deal with all the things that we have at work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abad.
Good afternoon, chairpersons of committee, as well as committee members. My name is Brian Bradford. I'm a paramedic from Newcastle County, Delaware. I'm a representative of advanced life support providers who serve citizens under a third service EMS model. I've worked in emergency medical services for more than 20 years, including time with both private ambulance services and third service public agencies. I can tell you with confidence a third service model provides the strongest foundation for patient-centered, accountable, and clinically excellent emergency medicine. I'm here today because your city is considering an important decision, whether to allow EMS to stand on its own as an independent service. I want to share from my professional experience why that's a beneficial change for your community. When you have a third-party service, you have a dedicated medical mission. When EMS operates independently, the mission is clear and undivided, to provide the highest quality medical care to people when they need it the most. In combined fire EMS systems, leadership and resources are often split between two very different objectives: fire suppression and patient care. That division creates competing priorities and blurs focus. In a third service EMS organization, every training hour, every piece of equipment, every staffing plan, and every dollar in the budget is aimed at improving medical outcomes for patients. When the mission is singular, our goals are measurable and meaningful. We define our success by clinical outcomes: cardiac arrest survival, effective stroke and STEMI, or heart attack recognition and treatment, pain management, and patient satisfaction. This clarity of purpose leads to smarter deployment, improved accountability, and most importantly, better outcomes for the people we serve. When you have a third service party model, you have a cultural alignment with innovation. Firefighting and emergency medicine are both vital public services, but they are fundamentally different professions. Fire suppression is tactical and incident focused. EMS is diagnostic, medical, and patient-centered. When the two forces are under one roof, the larger culture often dominates, and the medical mission can lose its voice. With an independent system, EMS can fully embrace its healthcare identity. This allows for faster adoption of new medical technologies and innovations, like blood administration, community paramedicine, advanced cardiac care protocols, and point-of-care ultrasounds. Our goals are clear: improving patient health and safety. We implement change based on medical evidence, not organizational convenience. That agility keeps your system modern, responsive, and focused on outcomes that truly matter. The bottom line is better care for your community. When you combine all these factors, focused mission, transparent funding, professional workforce, and a culture of innovation, you get one thing: better care for patients. An independent third service EMS agency ensure that every policy, every investment, and every operational decision is guided by a single question: what is best for the patient? When a citizen dials 911 because a loved one can't breathe or because their child is unresponsive, they deserve responders whose sole mission is emergency medicine, not a system divided between multiple priorities.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And Ms. Johnson, I don't believe you submitted.
She just came as a factual evidence that I.
We
keep
appreciate you
speaking
being here. Thank you for sharing your experience with us, and I'm so sorry for the struggles you're facing. We need to do a better job of lifting up EMS wages. Thank you. Thank you all to this panel. Oh, excuse me, actually. Councilmember Ariola has a question.
Honestly, I just have one question, Oren and the union reps. How do you see this separation and becoming EMS its own entity benefiting your membership? How has the administration portrayed it that you will have the money to operate, the money to pay more money to your EMTs, and really be a freestanding agency on your own?
So we've been in a crisis ever since we merged. As soon as they implemented the promotional exam, we're losing hundreds of people every year to a profession that's not related. People are using us to go after a different profession because it's much easier to become a firefighter through EMS than it is through the open competitive exam. We wouldn't have 12-minute response time to a cardiac arrest. We're running down 40 to 50 trucks every day, every tour. That impacts the public. People that, when I came here, it was New York City EMS. If you wanted to go to police, you would take the open competitive. For fire, sanitation, or whatever other federal job or state, city job that's out there. Now they're giving them an opportunity, they're pushing them out because they're pushing them through this exam, making $40,000 to $109,000. That's very easy to leave.
Joanna, there's, like Oren said, it's become a stepping stone. We're the only emergency service, or what I would classify as an essential service amongst even non-emergency service personnel that has a pathway to leave the job the minute you come on. And to benefit the members, how we don't have support within the FDNY. For 5 years since the pandemic, I have been banging the drum of the mental health and the stresses it's taken on EMS workers. Since 2020, we have had 14 EMS members commit suicide. That is in addition to 39 members I personally am monitoring who have had suicidal ideations. And that's only the people who have reached out. And when I've brought this up to the department time and again, its resources such as CSU was set up for firefighters. It was never meant for EMS to begin with. It was a response to 9/11 for firefighters. And when I've asked them for additional support and funding for mental health services for EMS members, it has been met with silence. That's only for mental health services. To treat what we see every day over 5,000 times a day, I can not even begin to tell you when we sit across from the city and ask for support from salary adjustments that we need. That Dan Pollock confirmed it. They're uniform status, but we don't consider them for bargaining purposes. So they won't even give us the respect of giving us the uniform pattern. They don't even care. Their answer is, sorry, you don't deserve. We've tried to negotiate in good faith. We've sat there time and again. We've asked to be, so now we want to be separated from the fire department. I'd rather fail on my own than have somebody I keep going up against. It is the very definition, and I do not say this lightly, of an abusive relationship. You tell me you love me, you tell me you need me, and then every time I turn around, you beat me up. And then you say, sorry, you're making me do this to you. We are penalized way more than firefighters. We are disregarded. We have members who are homeless. I don't know what else to say. Like Oren said, for years we've been saying this.
Mike, I don't disagree with you. And Oren and I have been, from the day I was elected, we have been fighting the fight and trying to do the right thing and trying to get the mayor to do the right thing and trying to get OLR to do the right thing. I don't know how you will exist as a freestanding agency of your own if the mayor was not willing to give money to your agency to make it so that an EMT or a paramedic can be a career and not just a stepping stone, which is what we've all been working for, so that they would get the money that they needed, so that they didn't have to become firefighters.
Well, the people in power need to make that happen. If you want to save your citizens of this city that are literally dying, something needs to take place. And the people who make policy, who pass laws, need to do that. Our constituents are dying every day because we're not there in time. This is the wealthiest city in the world, and we have the worst EMS system in the world. I submitted testimonies from other agencies to show the breakdown of what other EMTs and paramedics make across the nation.
Right. Yeah, we've gone over that together. I just think that the administration has not been supportive while they're with FDNY, and I don't believe they will be supportive. And don't forget, we're going into another administration, so it's kind of uncharted waters. But it is an agency, if you're freestanding, you're going to need it to be funded. And I don't know that it can be guaranteed.
I understand your concern. We were semi-freestanding with HHC. The system worked better under HHC.
So that's where the funding would come from HHC.
Wherever the money is going to go to, whether it's through HHC or just create a separate division that can focus on life-saving.
Yeah, I think this bill is for a separate division, but what guarantees your members with the separation, that's my last question, by the way, and thank you for your indulgence. What guarantees your members the parity and the respect it needs with the separation? What is the guarantee that was given?
You will have medically career-oriented people coming here. This is just a stepping stone. This is a job that teenagers are taking now until they get a real job. And I hate to say it. A babysitter makes more than us.
I'd like to add.
And I'm sorry, just to add one more thing. When my men and women go to a disaster, or a traumatic incident, a firefighter gets placed off service for mental rehab, and it could be up to a year. My men and women don't have that. They're on the same call, treating that decapitated person, that baby that went into cardiac arrest and died in their arms. My men and women don't have that. What they do have is go home and commit suicide.
Well, that's not acceptable, and I'm sorry they're doing that. But I think that you're between a rock and a hard place, and that's where I'm concerned. But
Joanne.
I do understand everything that you're saying.
I do want to say one thing. It's not us that are a rock and a hard place. It's the citizens of New York that are in between a rock and
Oh,
a hard place.
I don't disagree.
Right now, EMS, constituted under the FDNY, approximately 70% of its workforce has less than 5 years' experience. If I had you in the back of the ambulance and I was taking you to the hospital, I said, don't worry, every nurse or doctor in there has less than 5 years' experience. Not only would you cut the straps off, you'd run the opposite direction. So
Right.
why is it okay when I bring the hospital to you?
Right, which is why we've been
Under
fighting
the
so
FDNY.
long for pay parity. We want to make EMT a full-time career. We want you to have the money that you have, that you deserve to have.
So give us the
And-
16% budget, we'll separate,
Well,
and
we
we'll go and start from there.
Right, so my point from the beginning is whatever they were going to give you into the budget to make yourselves freestanding, give it to you now.
They're saying
and everybody is-
60%. So
Everybody
I'll
is
tell you
happy.
what, you separate us, we'll paint the trucks ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Save your money on that.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you,
testimony as
Councilor.
always, and we
I
stand
guess,
with EMS.
thank you, Chair Ariola. I guess, when I questioned Commissioner Tucker about where you all were, he said bluntly, well, I speak to the unions, so should you. And I'm the labor chair, so I speak to the unions. I've spoken to many of you at this table repeatedly. We've held, Chair Ariola, Minority Leader Ariola, and I have chaired multiple hearings on this issue. So where are they getting that the union wants to stay within the?
They're getting it from the members who come here because they know they can go and become firefighter. You're not going to get the rank and file to tell you they want to be separated. They want to become firemen so they can provide for their family. It's a very easy path versus the open competitive exam. You have 30,000 people apply on the open competitive. Only 1% maybe makes it. For us, anybody who applies through EMS, bye, we'll see you.
They're expecting about 1,500 members from EMS to be lost through the fire promotional. You asked, where does he get it from? He doesn't speak to the unions. We've only met with him once since he was appointed, and he cares so much that he's leaving. So obviously he doesn't care. It's hollow words. It's my 5th commissioner since I've been here. And all 5 have said EMS is important. And all 5
to be
have
fair, we're getting a new mayor, so it's not really his decision.
I understand, and we look forward to working with the new mayor, and we're hopeful.
Do you know what they're planning to do in the coming months? The city championed on Be Heard program, but because they can't staff EMS, they're canceling us. They're pushing our work to a private company. That's how bad things are. They closed all our support staff that are EMS people. They closed all the resource centers so they can go be placed on an ambulance because we don't have the manpower. And we're doing all that. Our response times are still every day, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Jobs
No, we
holding
know.
4 hours.
Councilwoman, we provide the same services, right? We both respond to 911 calls, us and firefighters. We are just treated differently.
No, I know.
You're
You're preaching to the choir here. I mean, we're committed to this, and that's why we're here. I just
Yeah, I
wanted
know.
to get that clarity on the record. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I want to thank this panel for joining us. Your testimony was exceptionally insightful. We really appreciate your years of advocacy on this matter, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in partnership to ensure that EMS workers get the compensation they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to see who is still here from the UFT. John Camps, the Para Vice Chair. Anthony Barnes, the Para Vice Chair. Christy Angel, D75 President from the PTA. She left. Okay. Goodbye, Christy. Samantha Wilner, Policy Analyst at the UFT. She's not going. We miss Samantha too. I hope she has a great day. We got Michelle Herman. Treva Taylor, Para, UFT. Treva. Thank you, Treva. Tanya Calvo. Tanya's here. Great. And we'll invite Andrea Polite, an in-service para from the UFT as well. That is our UFT panel. We've got one more panel after this. Each of the speakers, we thank you for being here, 2 minutes each. You can begin in whichever order you are so moved. 3 left. You want to start on the end and we'll go over? Treva, you want to begin?
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you for being here.
It certainly has been an eventful morning, so to speak. And so today, I, Trayvon Taylor, paraprofessional representative serving the D75, District 75 Special Needs Sector of the DOE. I stand here and I sit here before you today as someone in the extraordinary situation and circumstance, but as someone who also knows what it feels like to give everything and still be unseen and know this injustice cannot persist. I sit here as a paraprofessional, again, serving D75, sitting here as one of thousands who show up day after day, quietly holding the heartbeat and being the backbone of every classroom. I've been the one who comes in early and stays late and still finds the strength to show up again on the next day. Not because it's easy, but because I care too much for our students, especially in our district, not to find myself coming in. As I sit here before you, as well as my union brothers and sisters here, we represent thousands of voices, thousands of hearts who know the same story all too well, who are right behind us. I've been the one guiding a child through a meltdown, catching them before they fall, teaching them how to read when the world said that they could not. I've been a mentor, a counselor, a peacemaker, and sometimes the only safe space that a child has all day, understanding that they come from broken homes. But let me also be honest, I've also been the one counting pennies at the gas pump, checking the bank account before buying groceries and my necessities, and lying awake at night whispering, Lord, why am I going to make it, and how am I going to make it to the next check? There were times I was one paycheck away from eviction, times where I've worked 2 or even 3 jobs just to make ends meet and to keep my head above water, times where I walked into the school with an empty stomach, but a full heart. And to fast forward, I would like to say, I prayed for strength that wouldn't run out before the last bell rang, that I would mean that that's what it means to be a paraprofessional, where we don't just work, but we pour. We pour our time, our patience, our energy, and our hearts into a system that too often gives us too little in return. So when we talk about this $10,000 respect check, understand that this isn't about a luxury, it is a lifeline. This is about lifting the weight that's been pressing down on every person that is here on today, who holds our classrooms and our children together. It's about the paraprofessional who skips lunch to cover classes, the paraprofessional who comforts a crying student while silently fighting back tears of their own, the paraprofessional who faces eviction like how I have, even with their body aches and their spirits very drained. Because when you invest in us, you invest in every student that we serve. When you honor us, you honor the foundation of education and the future of our students itself. And when you pay us fairly, you give us the strength to keep going and to do what is best, changing the lives of our young people. So we're not asking for favors, we're asking for fairness. We're not asking for the applause, but we're asking for respect. So today, let this be a moment to be the start of something different. All it takes is one person, one yes, one person to say that enough is enough. And if that person has to be one of us here on this morning, this afternoon, let it be one of us, because we are one who stands in the front of many, and our time is now.
Thank you so much, Trayvon. That was beautiful testimony. We'll keep the remaining panelists to 2 minutes. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Polite. I am a District 75 paraprofessional also, and I'm here to testify on behalf of Intro Bill 1261, the Respect Check legislation, to address the unfair practice of pattern bargaining. Every year at my school, we have a Thanksgiving feast for the students. Normally, I participate each year. Although I don't bring home a lot of money, I would budget money each year to make sure that I could provide a little extra something. You know, I'm from the South. I like to make my my potato salad. Every once in a while, I put a little shrimp in it and make it really good for the kids. But 2 years after my father passed away, I had to provide extra help for my parents, for my mother, my one remaining parent. And I couldn't participate. That broke my heart. I never like telling my students no. I'm the first person, if a kid doesn't have money for a field trip, I'm giving them money for a field trip. I've gone on field trips and seen kids not have lunch money, and I've not eaten lunch and just paid for their food. So that for me was a very, very hard situation. And it is so hard right now, I'm getting upset about it. But so this is one of the lowest moments in my professional life. I felt that I failed my students. I was financially unable to provide something that I feel that if a parent can't be there, that's what a paraprofessional job is. We stand in the gap. So this $10,000 respect check, it would have helped me in that situation. I never want to feel that I can't help my students. I always want to be their superhero. I never want to disappoint them. And with the money that we're making right now, we can't make it. I would never want any other paraprofessional to have to experience what I experienced. So please, thank you, and pass the respect check bill.
That was really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ms. Polite.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Calvo, and I am the District 25 Paraprofessional Coordinator at the United Federation of Teachers. My journey began back in 2002 when my own child was referred for several special education services. At that time, I did not even know what the initials EI meant in the special education world. However, it did not take long to get acquainted with them. Fortunately for me, my child was able to receive the services he needed to flourish, and I can say with all certainty that that would not have happened without his paraprofessionals. He smiled getting on and off the school bus each day. He learned to do things that I did not think possible at the time. Speech was one of the services he needed, and he had difficulty telling me what he wanted. It was frustrating. It was a frustrating time for all of us. He had several paraprofessionals, excuse me, in the room, and they would explain to me that he just communicated differently, using visuals and hand signals. He also had sensory issues. He also had sensory issues that made a day at the park or eating a meal overwhelming. The paraprofessionals would encourage him to climb and jump at the park with his peers, and snack time became a time to explore by touching and eating new foods. His teachers and academic experience were exceptional, but he thrived because of the nurturing and inspiration that he received from the paraprofessionals. They taught me, as a parent, that children do not learn in the same way, and that is okay. They taught him that it was okay to do things differently, and they did that because they performed their jobs with devotion and passion. I will never forget their names, Eva, Jessica, and Banshi, to name a few. What they did for him and all the students in their classroom was invaluable, and this respect check is just one way to show that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Anthony Barnes, and I am the Assistant Secretary for the U of T Paraprofessional Chapter. Imagine every time you get paid, you're still behind because your pay doesn't cover your cost of living. Imagine walking to and from work because you don't have enough left in your paycheck to buy the weekly Metro card. Imagine your lights are turned off by Con Edison because you couldn't keep up with the bill or the payment plan. Imagine not being able to pay your bills on time to boost your credit score to move into a better home for you and your family. Imagine keeping all this to yourself because you're embarrassed because you have a professional job that doesn't pay you like a professional. I experienced those things as a paraprofessional who has worked in the schools for more than 30 years. And unfortunately, paraprofessionals are still caught up in this never having enough money scenario. The respect check would mean relief and satisfaction for thousands of New York City paraprofessionals. This money would relieve members of many burdens that can be solved by just having enough money. The respect check will start to make up for the disrespect we have endured, that we are not seen as important, and that we are seen as really replaceable. The respect check will greatly close the gap between the top paying paraprofessionals and starting salary of teachers. And just asking you today to consider us and to move this bill forward. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much.
My name is John Camps. I'm the second vice chair of the Paraprofessional chapter. I want to thank Chairs De La Rosa and Ressler for having this hearing. And I'm here to speak in favor of the respect check. Right? Paraprofessionals are often described as an extra set of hands, and it's true that we are willing to jump in and assist in any and everything. However, we are so much more than that. We are an essential part of the school system. Paraprofessionals make sure that students get on the school bus every morning and are changed and fed throughout the day. We calm and support overspirited students so that teachers can devote attention to other children in their classroom. We slow lessons down and reset our students when they get frustrated to ensure that they keep moving forward, and that although this work is difficult, it is worth it. The best feeling in the world is to watch a student begin to understand something after struggling to see the glimmer in their eyes. It is this feeling and the love for our students that keep paraprofessionals in our profession, even if it means we and our families have to make sacrifices. While the Department of Education has not disclosed the exact number, we know that we are short a couple thousand paraprofessionals in New York City. This shortage forces us to take on multiple jobs within the school building, creating challenges for paraprofessionals and students alike. Rather than caring for just one student, we are often left to look after 3 to 4 students who need one-to-one paraprofessionals. This causes them to fall even further behind, since they don't get the undivided attention they need, and it leads to paraprofessional burnout. Many paraprofessionals also work additional jobs outside of the school building. Members of our chapter work as many as 3 jobs just to keep their heads above water financially, and still, they find a way to show up for their students every day with care and dedication. We are willing to take on extra work, but there is only so much we can take before it takes a toll on us and our families. For many paraprofessionals, the mental and financial stress that comes with this position is untenable, and they leave the profession altogether. While no one can blame them for making that decision, this creates a vicious cycle. The more paraprofessionals that we lose, the more work that there is for those who remain in the profession, making it more likely that they will leave too. We need to break the cycle, and passing a respect check legislation is a crucial step in the right direction. This respect check would give paraprofessionals across the city a sense of relief and the ability to take a deep breath. It would allow us to put more food in the refrigerator, potentially work 2 jobs instead of 3, throw your child a birthday party, spend more quality time with our families. This additional $10,000 would encourage paraprofessionals to stay in school and attract new educators to our profession as well. It would show that the essential services we provide is appreciated and recognized. Additionally, making the respect check...
Ask that you wrap up your testimony if you don't mind.
Almost done. Respect check a reality would prove the city is listening to us, its constituents. Last spring, the members of the UFT Paraprofessional Chapter had the privilege of meeting with our City Council representatives to share what the respect check would mean to us. We had the chance to explain that paraprofessionals actually, what a paraprofessional actually does throughout the day. Seeing the council members' names appear on this list as sponsors, after we spoke to them, made us feel proud, and that we had used our voices and they mattered. It assured us that we were seen, and it felt so empowering to be heard. Now, as I speak here today,
just going to ask that you wrap up.
Last sentence. Okay. And feel assured that our stories made an impact, and I urge you to vote in favor of the respect check to further prove that the constituents' voices do, in fact, make a difference. Again, thank you for holding this hearing and for listening to paraprofessionals in this city.
Thank you so much. It's a very powerful panel. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your insightful testimony. The last panel of the day is Veronica Longo, Connie Altamirano, and Emily Smith. And we have 3 people on Zoom. I unfortunately have to run, but Councilmember Chair De La Rosa is going to finish out this hearing for us. Thank you all for being here.
Hello? Just making sure it's on. I'm all set if you guys are all set. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, council members. My name is Veronica Longo. I work at PS 239 in Queens, Ridgewood, Queens, as a paraprofessional for the last 8 years. I'm also a District 24 alumni. I've gone to public schools, actually the one up the block, IS 77, and I actually won Paraprofessional of the Year last year as well. Yes, so I am so happy that you guys are taking a look at the Respect Bill because there's so many paraprofessionals that I work with in my school in District 75 that are struggling to make ends meet. We're often working 2 or 3 jobs, as you heard from many of the people in this panel, and it's basically you have to choose between paying your rent, buying food, or pursuing your education, because there are so many paraprofessionals who do want to become educators, but the cost of a master's degree, which is only supplemented by the Ed Prep program, 12 credits, you're responsible for the rest of that program to pay. So personally speaking, if many of us receive this $10,000 respect check, we're putting it straight back into our education so we can also make a livable wage, because a livable wage in New York City is $53,000. The base pay for a para is $32,000, and also speaking for my sub-para coworkers, they don't want to make the jump to a baseline para because $188 a day compared to the big pay cut you take because you have to put in for a salary raise. People can't wait 2 weeks. We're living check to check. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and have a great day.
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Altamirano, and I'm here as a mother with a daughter who has autism and a son that has ADHD. But my first experience was when I was 16 years old, so I'm taking you back to 1990. My sister, Allison, was born. My mother was only 5 months pregnant, and when my sister was born, she was less than a pound. Who saved her was Kings County Hospital. But her challenges that was one part of the beginning of her challenges. When she was growing up, she started to crawl at 2. She started to walk at 4. She didn't have the confidence. She was scared. She would have so many accidents. When now she became a public school student, she qualified for a para, but there wasn't any. Back then, the paras were making $16,000. So that's how I feel this moment is. And we haven't progressed. So I'm speaking as a parent and a special ed advocate. And I wish more parents showed up today. So, at 16, being her babysitter, I had to learn how to take care of her. And, later on, maybe 6 months later from starting kindergarten, she got a para. Her name was Miss Greenberg. She taught my family. She taught me how to take care of her. She was a big part of our family. And she didn't have to do it. It was after school, before school, weekends. She helped us. She educated me at 16 years old how to take care of my sister who was disabled. And she was her safety net. She has no balance till this day. And she's 35, by the way. And so she was with her from kindergarten till 9th grade. And I just want to say that it's vital. It's vital to have all special ed children have paras. It's vital for them to get the increase because it's important for them to continue and stay in the position. Sub-paras make more than a para, or permanent para. So that's why they stay as subs. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming in and sharing your testimony. It's meaningful, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Substitute para.
Thank you all who came to share your thoughts and your experiences today. If there's anyone in chamber who wishes to speak but has not yet had an opportunity to do so, please raise your hand and fill out the appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms in the back of the room. Please fill out the appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms. Oh.
Are the folks on Zoom going to be able to speak?
Not yet, not Zoom yet. Hold on one second, just the people in person. What's your name, sir? Your name? So we had your registration for an online comment, but you wanted to talk about Intro 407? Intro 407 is not being heard today. The note, that's in housing and buildings. This is civil service and government operations. Mm-hmm. I get it, but that's not the, 407 is in the buildings committee. This is not the buildings committee, so we will not be able to take your testimony on that issue. Mm-hmm. Do you all know? The housing and buildings, hold on one second. That hearing was deferred, sir. The hearing was deferred. It's not happening today. Thank you. Sorry about that. So seeing no other hands in the chamber, I'll now shift to Zoom testimony. We call on the following folks to speak: Timothy Sommerfeld, Travis Kessel, and Julian Morales. Timothy, you may begin.
You may begin.
My name is Timothy Sommerfeld. I'm the president of the Emergency Medical Service Labor Alliance, and I submitted a written draft of what I was going to talk about, but much of that has already been covered by other labor representatives. So I'm going to answer some of the questions that the esteemed councilpersons asked about third service EMS agencies. It's worth noting that third service EMS agencies are functioning well in many cities across the United States. The ambulances get fixed, supplies get given out in Austin, Boston, Pittsburgh, Newcastle County, Delaware, and Cleveland, Ohio. For example, in Cleveland, we share a mobile mechanic with the fire department, and in exchange, we provide them with medical equipment. In Pittsburgh, the rescue services are provided by EMS. So these are not barriers, so to speak, because all these resources belong to the city. And even in a separate EMS agency, you could still go ahead and have these capabilities covered. It's also worth noting that all of these third services are industry leaders in pre-hospital care. And a big reason that they work and that paramedics and EMTs want to work there is because they have pay equity. We proved in Cleveland that if you fix the pay, you fix the problem. We went from having a single-digit number of paramedic applicants to over 140 applicants when we achieved contractual pay parity literally within a matter of weeks. And lastly, you said, what would be different if you had EMS as a separate agency? And what we saw earlier today was that the fire commissioner would not commit to saying that paramedics and EMTs deserve pay parity. I'm willing to bet that if you asked any commissioner of a third service EMS agency if their employees deserve the same wages as police and fire, they would say yes without hesitation. EMS should not be a jobs program for underutilized firefighters, but be treated as an essential public service that deserves to be done well by dedicated providers, especially in New York City. I appreciate your time. You can ask me any questions now, or I know it's late. My info's in the comments. You can write me there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sommerfeld. We appreciate your testimony. Up next is Travis Kessel.
You may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Travis Kessel, as you stated. I am a paramedic with the City of New York, and I just wanted to testify on a few things. First and foremost, I enjoy being a paramedic more than anything my entire life, regardless of the sacrifices I have to make and my family has to make because of my salary. I enjoy and really do truly love helping people in the City of New York. I live in the City of New York as I have always lived in the City of New York. I'm active in my community board. I'm a member of my local community board and brought up EMS issues there as well. I'm here specifically to talk about actions that can be taken right now that I believe would really fix some of our issues. Obviously, pay parity, number one. To insinuate that fixing the pay today would not fix EMS's problems or its retention and recruitment problems is a farce. It is the number one issue with a bullet. If you could fix it today, you tell City Council can compel OOR to come and say, well, you know what, we will equalize the pay ranks across the board with the suppression side. you're going to keep EMS members. I can guarantee it. But the biggest issue we have is in our recruitment and retention is that we have this promotional exam, as it is referred to firefighter from the EMS ranks. And that's not only from the rank of EMT, it's from the rank of paramedic, which is a associate's degree program in many places. With us, it's a 10-month in-person, 5-day-a-week program. You lose lieutenants, you can lose captains. It's only age based into when you can promote. So if you were to reach that rank by the age of 29, you could leave. We're losing good people with good experience every time they put out a fire promotional exam. It is the #1 killer of our membership. It is what people come here to leave here from. I'm of the mentality that city jobs should be for city people. The purpose of the fire promotional exam was to diversify the ranks of the fire suppression side, which I agree was great.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Just if I could finish my point, what you are doing to minority neighborhoods and to diverse neighborhoods in this city is killing the people who live them by taking experienced EMTs and paramedics off the road. My proposal, get rid of the promotion to firefighter exam. You'll solve a lot of your issues.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Up next, we have Julian Morales.
You may begin.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to ask for a little bit more time. I know I'm at the end, but good afternoon, Chairs Restler, De La Rosa, and members of the council. My name is Julian Morales, and I'm a former staffer for a former council member and the former speaker of the body, a lifelong New Yorker, but today I'm here testifying as a father in my most important job. My daughter, Carla, who I'm picking up right now, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. She's nonverbal, but she communicates values through her bond with her paraprofessional, Paraprofessional, who I'm actually here with right now, picking her up. Tara has been a support. She has been Charlotte's lifeline. Their connection helped Charlotte thrive in school despite the challenges of transitioning from private to public education. This year, when Charlotte first started first grade without Tara, we saw an immediate decline, sleepless nights, anxiety, refusal to sleep or to go to school. We fought hard to reunite her with Miss Tara in the first grade, and after 6 weeks, we were successful. The difference was night and day. Charlotte smiled again. She felt safe. Not did she show up, she wrote a book, My Tara and Me, inspired by Charlotte. We built a website, wrote blogs, and became a resource for families like ours. She is one of the thousands of powers who change lives every day. Intro 1261 is about respect. It's about recognizing the essential role of paraprofessionals play in our children's lives. And it's about ensuring that they're compensated fairly in the next UFT contract. I would just also say, in the past, members of the public have been able to testify in advance. It would be great to be a practice for working families, and I would have loved to be there in person, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony and sharing your experiences. If you are currently on Zoom and wish to speak but have not yet had the opportunity to do so, please use the raise hand function and our staff will unmute you. Seeing no hands, I would like to note that everyone can submit testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. We thank the administration and the public for attending this hearing to share your thoughts on this legislation, on the important issues for both EMS and EMTs, as well as paraprofessionals in our city. We know that our city is only as strong as its workforce, and we appreciate everyone coming to share their thoughts, their testimonies, and their suggestion. I look forward to following up on these issues with my colleagues, and with that,